There are lots of resources on how to improve as a player, thousands of reviews for every hero, every rank, and obviously a lot of stuff that I put out there, but it's just difficult to know how to improve as a coach. I do have a playlist on coaching a coach with a lot of resources and working with other coaches and leadership and so on, but I've never done anything quite like this. Earlier this year, the National Association of Esports Coaches and Directions, NAECAD, reached out to me and offered to have me lead an Overwatch seminar at the University of Minnesota Stadium for the yearly coaches seminar. And they're an organization that's really focused on developing esports coaches at both the collegiate and the high school level, working with directors, working with coaches, working with managers, and even working with principals. And they do a lot of phenomenal work. And I was flattered at their offer. And so we put a lot of time into it. And we have, honestly, I feel like one of the more valuable resources. This is going to be one of the more valuable resources out there for any aspiring coach, whether you work at the collegiate high school scene or whether you're just coaching on the side. We're going to be talking today about team culture. We're going to be talking about team practice, and we're going to be talking about team macro, and even having another ex-Overwatch League coach, Mr. Ascoft, who's going to be helping out with the team culture side of things as well. If you are interested in coaching at the high school or collegiate level, please make sure to get in touch with NAECAD. I'll have their link in the comments. And if you are currently working as a coach at the collegiate or high school level, make sure to sign up as a NAECAD member to get advantage of all the programs that they have to offer. I want to shout out to them. This was my idea to make this public. This is normally a seminar. This is normally a course that would be under, honestly, a paywall. But I reached out to them and was like, hey, I really feel like this would be a phenomenal free resource for a lot of people out there that want to level up their game. And they very generously offered to make this free. And they very generously offered to make this free and available to the public so that any coaches out there, whether they're part of NAECAD or not, can improve their game. So big shout out to NAECAD. I want to thank them for this opportunity. Enjoy the seminar. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Enjoy the video. It's like when they start singing happy birthday, you know, and you're like, oh, what do I do with my hands, you know? But yeah, my name is Spilo. I've been coaching Overwatch, Overwatch League, Overwatch Contenders, private coaching, even helping out with collegiate coaching for many, many, many years since 2018. So today, the way I want to really approach today is we're going to have 3 different segments. It's going to be in team culture, it's going to be on team practice, and team macro. We're going to try to keep this interesting and engaging. And the most important thing is I don't just want to tell you guys what to do. I want to spark a lot of questions. And more importantly, I want you guys to actually, for each section, have something actionable that you can actually do with the things that I'm telling you how to do. So we're going to have a section after each segment where you're going to actually just going to work as a group or as an individual and take some notes on what I need to be doing better. What are some things that I can incorporate from what I just yapped on for about an hour? Okay, what am I going to do with that information? Because it's going to be really a little overwhelming to have all these things coming in and be like, okay, what do I actually do with this? And we're going to try to keep away from that. So I have my notes here. There's going to be a lot of actionable things that you guys are going to be able to take away. I encourage you to focus on what speaks the most to you immediately and then actually try to incorporate that. So highly recommend taking notes. Our objectives. So let's pay very close attention here to some of the terminology here. Nurture team culture, qualify team practice, and clarify team macro. Now, the way I use those words is really important, and we're going to talk about that. So let's start with nurturing team culture, because that's going to be our first segment today. I look at culture and the people that you're working with, the players that you're working with, it's a garden. And that analogy works because gardens are part RNG. You can do everything right. You can have the right soil. In fact, Pepper and I have been realizing this, right? You can do all the things right, and sometimes crap happens. Sometimes you got locusts. Sometimes you got a freaking hurricane. Sometimes you got heat. Sometimes the weather doesn't behave. But your job is to create a culture where good things just happen. They don't happen all the time, but they're more likely to happen, because ultimately your job as a coach and as a director is to create an environment where those things are more likely to happen. That doesn't mean that you control and micromanage everything. I know how many of you guys have had a situation where you felt personally responsible for a player's struggles or a team's struggles and were like, man, I suck, right? I think we've all been there before. It's not your responsibility all the time. It's your responsibility to create the environment where it's more likely to happen, but you can't force it. And I've learned many times trying to force it can often make things even worse. So nurturing a team culture like a garden. Qualify team practice. Now, I actually looked up the definition of qualify. It means to make it competent. So when we're talking about our team practice, it means to make it what it needs to be. I think we heard about the great speech there by Coach Pioneer, talking a lot about things you could do for your team practice. I think there's a lot of great notes in that, but really you need to be making your practice competent so that it can make your players competent. You don't make competent players, you make competent practice that will then make those players better. And then finally, clarify team macro. And this one's an important word too, because if you guys have seen any of my videos or follow my content a lot, I talk a lot and I introduce a lot of detail and a lot of complicated concepts. But ultimately, especially when you're teaching with beginners or even with advanced players, ultimately the basics and the fundamentals are the most important things, and by a lot. So when we're talking about strategy, we don't need to go super complicated. We need to find what are the biggest bang for our buck concepts and really make sure we're doing those fundamentals right. I've coached at the highest level. We're in Hawaii. We're qualifying for the Overwatch League playoffs. The best players, the best teams in the world. And really it just came down to fundamentals. The details are often take care of themselves. I think it's good to be detail-oriented and to work with players individually, but you have to understand the priorities. And the priority is always the same things. And we'll talk about what those priorities are. So the biggest thing is to learn and execute, develop habits. You don't just learn, you don't just teach your players, you teach your players how to build good habits. Whether it's as an individual or whether it's as a team, the best thing you can do is develop habits for your team so that they can actually do those things better. So we're going to talk about team culture today. That's going to be the first third. I'm going to be working with Ascoft. We'll introduce him in just a second. He is an Overwatch League coach, worked with the Vancouver Titans and the Boston Uprising, and he's actually a psychology expert. He has a bachelor's and master's in psychology, and so he's going to be talking to us a little bit about team culture. Before we do that, though, let's actually talk about what team culture is. Winning is the consequence of building the right habits. A lot of people might say that vacuum is really loud, but actually I find that vacuum to just accentuating me and forcing me to project louder so that I can get my points across even better. But yeah, winning is it's building the right habits. It's not setting the right goals. It's the right habits. I think we can be very goal-oriented. This is actually, you can't make this up. This is actually hilarious. Only in Minnesota where they'd be chopping wood just outside the meeting. So habits are basically, the goal is what we want to achieve. The habit is how we get there, right? You guys have heard about actionable goals, actionable habits. Well, habits is like, what do you do day in, day out that makes those goals achievable? I think everyone was like, oh, I want to get to the Overwatch League. I want to get to Grandmaster. And I'm like, yeah, shut up. Okay. What are you going to do to get there? Like, what's the difference between you and those Grandmaster players? And you need to stair-step your way to that point. And oftentimes players, especially immature players and immature coaches, will aim too high. They'll be like, all right, well, I'm going to start playing 4 or 5 hours per day. I'm going to VOD review every single day. That's my favorite one. I'm going to VOD review every single day. And I call them out. I call it bluff. You're lying. You're lying to yourself. That's not actually what's going to happen. So what are some small goals that you can set in mind right now? Build those habits until it becomes automatic, and so you can actually achieve those goals. And that's what culture really is building those little small things, right? Whether that's in-game or out-of-game, and doing them over and over and over again until consequently winning happens. Because this is my quote here: winning is a consequence, not a mindset, not a goal. It's a consequence that can be as fickle as a roll of a dice. Your job is not to win, but to cultivate, the garden analogy, right? To cultivate a culture where performance and progress are inevitable over the long term, whatever that may look like at your skill. And I think that's important as well, because a lot of us in here, a lot of the college teams I've worked with have like 2 random bronze players, and there's like a master's player, and there's that diamond player with the ego who wants to get the Overwatch League, and then there's the plat player that plays the game only on the weekends and just plays everything. Like, you guys have a lot of different ingredients, and it's unrealistic to set expectations of like, we're gonna get everyone to Grandmaster, we're gonna win the championship. Okay, where are you at right now with the ingredients that you have? It's like one of those chef shows. You know, you can only cook with like a Spam and ketchup. What are you gonna do with that, right? That's kind of what we're working with. What can you accomplish with what you have, and what's realistic with what you have? So Bill Walsh, a great NFL coach, said the score takes care of itself. It's even more of a priority for you guys because you should not have to compromise your ethics to win. Your job is to develop players, not necessarily to win. It's about developing young talent, making them better people and better players. So today we do have a specialist on team culture. As I said, Coach Ascoft. He has worked with the Boston Uprising, the Vancouver Titans, who did very well with him as a coach. And somebody who is actually a little bit more light-handed than a lot of the other Overwatch League coaches. So we'll let him talk about team culture and psychology. Let me actually get that set up here. Okay, in 1 minute. So actually, we'll take that minute. And if you guys have any questions right now would be a good time while we're waiting. Yes, quick question here.
When it comes to VOD review at the college level, a lot of times time is not a lot of it. So how do I generally try to aim for 45 minutes to no more than 60 minutes for a VOD review, but what do I do how do I get the most of it if I only have like 30 minutes and it's a team?
Prepare ahead of time and have a theme. Yep,
okay.
Yep, 100%. You should always almost exclusively go into a VOD review with a theme and an idea of what you're trying to accomplish with that goal. In fact, I think oftentimes the shorter reviews are more effective because they're more translatable into practice. I think you had a question as well?
For example, my team has an issue where it's like we know what we're doing wrong.
Yep.
It's just we go after, over 6 weeks in a row, every practice and scrim.
Yep.
That's what we need to work on.
Yep.
And it never happened. So my team is exactly a GM tank, 2 golds, 2 bronze.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. What I would say is you need to be repetitive with your practice over and over again, but if it becomes the point to where it's boring, you need to move on. Even if you failed miserably in the execution and you made literally zero progress, you need to move on, because at that point, as soon as practice becomes exceedingly boring and the players aren't putting focus in, then the practice has lost its value entirely. So you need to move on and maybe revisit at a later point. It's also important, I think, that as coaches, we can set unrealistic expectations where we see our players, they'll fix this, it will be done perfectly. In reality, that takes a long time to be accomplished. So I would say you should be setting goals of improving that by 5, 10, 15%, but it's not going to actually fix itself the first time. You're going to have to revisit it over and over again. Good question. Okay, here's what we can do actually. Let's actually skip ahead. I guess Ascoft is going to talk to us a little bit about culture. Do you guys have anything that come to mind when you say things that maybe you have implemented in your team culture that has worked well? Yeah, you got something?
We end every practice with a go to the order call it. Basically, everybody gets whatever time they need to say what they want to say to anybody in the room.
That's perfect.
And they end by every time they end, though, they're going to say, letting them know to move on to the next person by saying love, respect.
Yeah, that's perfect.
On the wall, that's what we do.
And that's perfect, right? Because that's a great example of like one of those like how do you quantify or qualify like how much value that provides? But you know it does. It allows people to process the emotions or the frustration of what just happened. And that's a perfect example of like a little habit, right? Like it sounds corny, like, oh, like team bonding, oh yeah. But it matters. And people get in the habit of doing it. And all of a sudden you're gonna win games from that habit. It might not be immediately, it might not even know what games were won because we're able to process our emotions better, but that's like little things like that. And so oftentimes culture is like a creative thing. So, okay, so Ascoft's here, so we're gonna go ahead and jump in the call here. This is like so well done, so professional. It's Overwatch. You guys did not expect anything but stuff. Ascoft, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me fine?
Doing great. So I kind of already introduced you, but if you want to give like a quick intro and then just shoot your presentation. We had a couple of questions already, so but you do your thing, man. I appreciate your time.
Of course. Always love talking about myself. Okay, so we're good to go. Let me share my screen real quick.
Okay, we got it. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. See, you know you're an Overwatch League coach. There you go. Okay, I'm ready.
The template that I use in
all right, let's do it.
Okay, so quick introduction for myself. My name is Valentin Dorfman. I go by the nickname Ascoft. I used to be a player. I played for 3 years. I won the European Championship in 2019 as a player. Then I coached for 4 years, 3 years in Boston, and then 1 year in Vancouver when I was the head coach. We went from a low budget team and expected like last or second to last to 5th in regular season, and like most of it was due to, well, of course, good scouting, but good and proper team environment development. So it comes down to team culture, which is like the subject of today. I've tried to gather like sort of like the 3 biggest concepts that I think are important in team culture. When you speak about team culture, usually it's very vague, I think, at least to me. It can mean a lot of things. So yeah, the 3 most important sub-subjects sort of team culture for me are values, rituals, roles. I'll go from them one by one. We can start with values because I think it's the thing that you need to define first as a head coach of your team, even before you start scrims and everything with your team. It's important they understand like what kind of team environment they're in. So usually what you should do is a team chart. I'll show you an example of what we did in Vancouver like really soon. But basically what you want to do is you take 3 values, 4 values. It shouldn't be too many because you don't want to confuse players or anything. It should be like, you know, clear in your head what the team values are. So 2, 3 team values. What you want to do is have the behaviors associated with it and sort of like the punishments that are like linked to if you don't follow the same values, right? So I'll show you the example of what we did in Vancouver last year. This was the team chart that I've done. Prior to that, I've talked to every player individually to try to get them to tell me like what is important for you in like a team environment and everything. So they would give me behaviors that I would link to values, or they would straight up give me the values, right? So there was one values, the values you see on the top left here of autonomy and commitment, that was really important to me, that I sort of like forced, although they were on board, right? But there was like the values that said like, you have no choice, this is gonna be like that. So we linked and talked about like in a team session about like, what does it mean actually like autonomy and commitment in the team environment? Well, it means like you have routines, you want to be a professional player and athlete, you need to do routines of like pre-game, post-game, pre-scrim, post-scrims, of like, you know, treating your body well, good sleep, exercise, that kind of stuff, and you need to be autonomous doing it because we didn't have much budget, so it's not like we had an assistant coach or like a performance coach here every day to do do it with us. You can see a little bit of other stuff like active review, self-analysis was the kind of stuff that we depicted as very important for the team. Honesty was one of the values that the players, they sort of, all of them individually during our talks, or individual talks, talked about it. They said, like, I want to be in a team environment when I can be honest. If something goes wrong and everything, you don't have time to, like, sugarcoat it. I want to be able to say, like, okay, this is going wrong, this guy is fucking up and everything. So I was like, sure, that's a great value to, put in the team chart to, like, increase performance. And then we talked a little bit about the behaviors. Basically, the one rule that I've put on this is, like, don't voice it like an asshole. Don't voice it of, like, being honest just because you want to hurt someone because you're mad. Be honest because you want the team to move forward anyway. So it was, like, more so, like, on the wording of stuff and the empathy and everything that we discussed about how this value should be, applied in the team environment. Friendliness and everything. You can put whatever you want, sort of. I would recommend as a head coach, you take at least one value that you really care about, that should guide you, and put it here, and then the other two, try to include your players in it. So, but at least, like, we talked about this, we agreed on that, then I printed, I made all of them sign it. This one is a little bit bad, but... Alright, cool. So basically what I was saying is, like, so I don't go over it again. Punishments, like the thing with Starbucks, I've talked about it. You guys
I don't think we talked about punishment, guys. No, we didn't talk about punishment.
So, what I was saying is, like, what I did is, like, I included the players into defining what punishment they should have if they don't follow, like, the behaviors associated with values. So for instance, if they were late, 1 minute late, it shows that if you're 1 minute late to reviews, you need to pay Starbucks for the whole team. And so that means 40-50 bucks. So, it was not fucking around. Like, if they were late, it was an actual punishment. But because they chose it, they were super mad about it, right? I would recommend doing it if you have, like, a fully Western environment, because that's what's works best. If you don't have too many Korean imports or whatever, but I guess you don't. Nice, but if you have, like, mostly a Western culture in your team, autonomy development is what works best, whether it's in sport or, like, esport or whatever. So definitely recommend that. You can choose whatever values you want. What's important is that you reinforce these values through behaviors, what you show yourself as a head coach, and, like, the behaviors of your players. So listing behaviors associated with values, punishments associated with, like, not following these values is really important. So the second thing, rituals, it's a bit vague as well. I would define it simply, but I'm a big fan of it. Like, I've tried to establish so many rituals in Vancouver just for the sake of it. I think that's what gives sort of the vibe in the team of, like, you belong to something that is greater than just yourself. So it's just a moment. Rituals for me are just a moment that you spend together, whether it's during the day, during the scrim, or, like, after it. But that's what makes you really feel like you belong in the team. Routines are sort of part of it. I will touch on it a little bit as well. I'll give you one example again from Vancouver. It was it's not the healthiest example, but we had, like, a tradition sort of. After a match, whether we win or lose, we would all go to McDonald's together. So it's not the healthiest, but that was, like, I don't need to, like, go into details of how we came up with it, but that was, like, our way, sort of like, having, like, a post-game ritual where, like, we would all go out together. It was a place to vent, especially if you lose, because I think it's horrible. Teams where, like, you lose and there's nothing, and, like, if you're online player disconnect, then nothing, or, like, if you're, like, in person, then, like, people just go home. I think it's the worst feeling, and, like, it actually, like, destroys sort of, like, your team environment. So you need to have something. You can let them chill a little bit on their side, but then the night of, I really recommend you do something. We had this, so it allowed me for the players to, like, stick together, to have some support, like, if they play bad or anything, to vent, and for us to discuss and, to, like, feel better and, like, move on to something. Like, we would go downtown and see other people and everything. That was pretty nice. That was, like, one ritual, right? And the ritual kind of sucked in the sense, like, you should probably not eat McDonald's once a week even, but the idea is still the same. It's like a post-game ritual, right? So we can talk a little bit about that. It also depends. So that I've come here, like, here what I've showed is, like, sort of like a day of scrim, or, like, you have reviews before, 2 days of scrim, 2 hours of scrims, a break, 2 hours of scrims. What you should put between these are really important, I think, for me. It's, like, sort of like rituals / routines. I will give you an example of, like, what we did in Vancouver. So for the morning routine, we asked 3 things for players to drink water as soon as they wake up, because there's something about, like, how it activates your liver and it tells your body to wake up. Sun exposure is exactly the same. You actually need the sun to go through your eyes to have this, to activate biologically, to, like, activate your body. Exercise, same. exercise has shown in general just for like quality of life and everything, but even for performance, there's been studies recently that show that like cognitive tasks that you have to achieve if you exercise before. During the day, during the scrims, we can go in details, like it's going to take like 30 minutes if we do it, about like how you can optimize everything. One thing that is very, very important that you should always do, I think, is just before every block, it should be very clear for the players what goal they're working on. So goal setting is like the number one skills that you should apply, and I recommend you apply on a consistent basis. So individual goal setting, players should always be like, on every matchup and everything have a goal on what they're doing. It can be a broad goal, sort of, or like improve on this or that, but they should always have a goal. You should always like go towards a goal. Team goals as well is really important in terms of like strategy or even communication or whatever you want. But you should always set up goals. I think it's really important. And you can adapt those goals depending on like who you play. If you know you're going to play against a style like a team that always plays rush, then you can do your review before, just on rush, and then be like, okay, these are the 2-3 points. Don't go over 2-3 points, I think, because otherwise it's impossible to focus on more than 2 things. I think 2 things for me was the maximum I did in Vancouver, for individual goals and for team goals, per screen. But I would really recommend you do that if you don't already. One thing that is very important as well is a debrief after the scrim. Sort of same thing of what I was saying in like after a match, if you have nothing, especially if you lost, if you have nothing like no team rituals, it feels really sad and like it can, it snowballs into bad team environments. After scrims, you need to have these sort of rituals to have separation between scrims and the time they're gonna have, because for us in Vancouver, once you were done with like the debrief, we were done with today. So separation between the scrim time and the team time versus like the alone time and the rest time. And I think it's really important instead of just like, well, scrim over, let's just go home. It's an opportunity for you to also, if the scrim went wrong, to like sort of let players know, for you as a head coach to acknowledge struggles. I think that's something that's really important because it needs to be said, it needs to be voiced. If there are stuff that are done poorly and everything, so that like everybody, acknowledge that, but because maybe there's frustration because one player played badly. And I think it's your job as a head coach to call him out like in the way that you seem fit, whether it's like harsh or not super harsh, but at least to say it so that it's not like, they spend one day and then the head coach doesn't even speak about the fact that one player is totally hinted to scream. One thing that you should include, I think is very good, that I've learned about, I didn't do it in Vancouver, I wish I did, talking about with performance coaches. The 1-1-1 rule, where like after every day, during the debrief, you talk about one thing that you guys improved on, one thing that you guys more or less stay stable, like you're still decent at it, or like you didn't really improve, or like, but you get it, and one thing that you should focus on for next, right? It's a way to like close the debate and be like, okay, let's move on now. You can go rest or solo practice or anything during the night, reducing lights gradually, so that you go to sleep better, because obviously sleep is like the number one predictor of performance. When it comes to anything you can control, sleep or diet or exercise, it's the best thing. And we recommended one relaxation ritual, but it mindfulness, yoga, bath. That's something that is fairly harder to do and to implement online, but you can always find like, it's whatever ritual, even if it's watching a series or whatever ritual that makes him feel better, make the player feel better, I think it's good. Yeah, so that's more or less what I had on rituals. Of course, happy to talk about it more in depth if you guys have a question after that. The last thing I wanted to touch on, because I'm nearing the end of my time, rules. It's very important that the rules are clear in your team. You need to have a moment within like in the team session and in the one-on-one session for each player about what the rule is, or at least if it's not for each player, for like the ones that are like the most important for your team environment, sort of. Try to explain that in the sense like if you have a guy that is clearly a leader in the team, it should be 100% said like during your one-on-one session that like, okay, I expect you to be the leader in this team. The team depends on you and everything. You can have the discussion of like tied with his values, because if he's a leader, usually he's gonna have the value of like caring for his teammates. He's gonna have the value of like really wanting to be that kind of leader and everything. And you can have the same discussion sort of you had with values with the team, in the sense of like, okay, what behaviors are associated with a leader and what behavior you should avoid, right? So in that sense, and as I said, like you should have this discussion one-on-one, and then in team session it should also be clear that this guy is the leader, right? So you should have a moment where you're like, okay, even if it's like unsaid and everybody thinks that he's the leader, it's still best to clarify it because you don't want to take the risk of someone like not really clearly understanding who's the leader in the team, right? So you need to have clarification, you need to have accountability in the sense that if you do that, you have this session with the player and his role is clear. If there's one, like the leader, for instance, if there's one game where like he tilts and he stops talking, having your leader stop talking in game is the worst thing because it impacts the game way more than like if it was another player. So you can go and talk to him after the game and be like, well, you know, your role is clear, you accepted it, and then yet you have like a behavior that like is slowly, you know, going against the role that you said you would, you know, take in the team. So you can like sort of like highlight discrepancies in their behaviors. And because you had this initial session where they agreed to have this role, then you have actually it's legit for you to do that, right? So leaders are like one of the most obvious roles. It's about like the heart of the team. So if you have a guy in your team that is like really the guy that everybody likes, is always positive. In esports terms, if you guys know the player, like the EU player Naga, who I worked with recently, who's working with Team Peps, and they qualified for the World Cup recently. That's like clearly the definition of the heart of the team. The guy is like super positive, always super positive, super nice. He's the guy that like bonds the other guys together, right? He was always the one pushing for like spending time outside of the game together, which is really important to bond and everything. And so one of the things that we did when I worked with them a little bit is that I made sure that he knew these behaviors and like what role he had in the team and how important it was. And I, you know, I went on it in the sense of like, I also explained to him, like players actually told me, like the other players, like they see you that way. Do you see yourself that way? Do you see yourself at the heart of the team? They said that they rely on you for this kind of stuff and everything. It makes them accountable and it makes them really clear that, okay, that's my role in the team. I need this for like the team to work the best. I need to have these kind of behaviors and to continue. It avoids inconsistency in their behaviors, right? And it makes sure that like they know 100% what their role is within the team. And I'm not talking about roles in game, right? As you guys mentioned, which is also another thing that you can do. But yeah, this is, in my sense, very important to do. And you should do it for like at least 1 or 2 players that are very important in your team environment. And you can have like as many rules as you want sort of that you think are good for your team environment. But yeah, in conclusion, it's sort of like, yeah, there's other stuff we can talk about like, you know, your philosophy as a coach, how they, but like everything is sort of linked, even the value, rituals, rules, you see like everything is linked in this team culture. But in 15-minute time, that's what I thought would be best to talk about. So yeah, I'm done now. If you guys want, we can talk about, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to discuss them.
Well, thank you so much. I know I found that very informative. We're going to probably have time for 2 to 3 questions. Does anyone have any questions specifically what was talked about with culture? Just raise your hand. Yes. I'll repeat it.
Can he go over like goal setting a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah, so we got a question about goal setting, like what's the best way of setting goals? Okay, perfect. Lovely, thank you.
So, goal setting, it's a good question. You have like, I'm trying to write it down somewhere. You have different kind of goal setting. You have like outcome, performance, and process. All of these are goals, right? I'll put it like this so you can see it better. The outcome goal is the goal that you should have, like, you know, what's your end goal? What's the reason?
Wait, guys, we're back.
Hello?
We're back. Can you hear us, Ascoft?
You did on Discord.
Wait, okay. Can you hear us?
Yes.
So we talked about, we had OPP, the goals, and then we went bang. So what we're going to do is, okay. We're actually going to finish with this question, just so we're in the interest of the unstable internet connection. So, so it was a question about goals, and then we'll let you go after this. That's a nice mug, by the way. That's a beautiful mug. Can we see that mug once more, please? Please.
That's my girlfriend's mug.
Yeah, that's a likely story. Okay, finish. Go ahead, sir.
So outcome. So did I explain outcome, performance, process?
You basically typed the terms, and we're starting to explain what those terms meant. Yeah.
Okay. So outcome means I'll make it quick if you guys are in a hurry. Outcome means basically whatever motivates you to play. You know, I want to be the best. I play because it's fun, whatever. They should always that in mind, but it's their goal. Performance is something that can be sort of mostly measured in the sense of like I want to be like top 4 in the West, or you know, like a global, you know, sort of like general goal but achievable. Process is what I said should be. That's what I was referring to when I said they should have process goals every day. It comes down to like the very specific, tailored, strategical feedback that they should have. I'll give you an example. In Vancouver, you know, if if we know the next day we're gonna have a scrim against London, London is gonna play Rush, right? So I'm gonna do my whole review before the game, before the scrim on Rush, and then after the review is done, I'm gonna be like, okay guys, so the goals against Rush today, I'm gonna stick to 2 goals. As I said, like if you go beyond 2 goals, I think it's like unclear for the players. There's too many things that they need to remember in games for like, so you're gonna lose them. 2 goals, team goals that you should, tempo or whatever, can be very specific feedback about like, okay, we need to like set up our kill box and dive better, we need to do this, that. So 2 goals. And then individually speaking, players should have goals too. So for instance, against Rush, maybe I give feedback to Crimzo to, play a little bit more of the mind games against Hadi, who's like trying to always like, shield the nade of our Ana. And Crimzo, like the block before that we watched, he was like throwing his nade without thinking, and we got it blocking too much. So I would tell Crimzo, okay, try to be more creative and take into consideration that he's trying to block your nade or whatever. Maybe specific feedback on for Punk on like his jump angles or whatever. This is the kind of stuff that I mean. It's like they should have like a clear goal. When they go into this scrim, they're like, okay, as a team, we're gonna try to do this better. And that means individually, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna try to. And at the end of the day, you can assess, okay, did I do good? Did I do bad? Do I need to keep working on it or whatever? That's what I mean with like the process goals. You should. It's a lot of work, but that's why like in traditional sport there are so many coaches as well. But ideally, that's something that you want to be done. And in Vancouver, we also, that's why autonomy I think is great when you don't have that much resources, is because you should teach them how to set up process goals first, then they should be able to do it themselves, and you only check that they are setting up goals. And in Vancouver, that's mostly what players did. They were setting up their own goals, and they were just noting it on their sticky notes, and they were doing it.
Well, Ascoft, I really appreciate your time. Can we get a round of applause for Ascoft? Yeah. I really appreciate your time, mate. Have a wonderful rest of your week, sir. Cheers. Thank you.
All right, see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so that was Ascoft. Obviously, the guy is just really brilliant. And I think the thing that's crucial for him as well is this, I could tell you that a lot of Overwatch League coaches are aware of team culture and the importance of team culture, but it's not prioritized as much as it was with Ascoft. And to be honest with you, the results speak for themselves. The rosters that he had were good, but he consistently overperformed with the rosters that he had because of the things here. And I think that's the key thing. Ultimately, culture, if I can get this thing to work here, culture is a bit intangible. It's like all those intangible little things that make a program functional, productive, ethical. But to me, it's like you said, it can be a little bit vague what culture is, but what you should be doing should not be vague at all. Like, you should have looked at that presentation. You should be thinking about our presentation right now, even though mine's not quite as sexy. And you should have some ideas, like concrete ideas. Like, okay, we're going to be doing this team discussion. We're going to McDonald's. There needs to be something actionable and specific and concrete that you're going to do with that that's going to create your culture. So even though the concept is vague, the action behind the concept should not be vague whatsoever. So a winning culture is one that has a system of small things done well and done over and over and over. Things like prepared and focused review, encouraging mentorship, accountability, clear communication, honest and direct feedback, focused practice, productive breaks, out-of-game guidance, and all of those things. And as I said, ultimately, Overwatch is a means to an end. Some of you may be here to learn how to win more matches, but if that's your only goal, you've already failed. Through Overwatch, we have the opportunity to develop players. We talked about earlier a lot of player development questions, but really the most important question is what are the players going to get out of this once they're done with college? What are they going to learn from this, whether it's building the ability to give productive feedback without coming across like a turd? Is it better exercise, better sleep, the understanding of how to deal with adversity, the ability to build a better schedule, right? These are all things that are actually really, really relevant outside of Overwatch. And that, to me, is the most important goal of team culture, is player development inside and outside of Overwatch. So it's a means to an end. So food for thought. What are 1 to 3 small adjustments you can make in your team culture right now, whether it's something that Ascoft said, something that I yapped about, or something that you just came up on your own just while you were thinking about this? What are some 1 to 3 things that you can do to improve your team culture? I encourage you to be taking notes, whether it's on your phone, your notepad, whatever. And I would love to, after the next 10 minutes, to actually go around and give you guys and hear some of your goals, and we'll talk about those. So let's go and do that right now. We'll do it 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to be roaming around. If you guys have any questions in relation to team culture, now is a good time to ask them as well. But we're going to make it kind of like individual stuff. So, okay, let's go. If you have a question, just raise your hand and let out a blood-curdling scream. Or at least one of those things. All right, so we're going to wrap up real quick. So pause everybody real fast. I hate to interrupt. But what I'd like to do before we take a quick break here is I would like, if any of you guys have any goals that you've developed from this discussion, I'd love, raise your hand. I'd love to share a couple of them. Anything, yeah, really quick, anything that stood out to you?
They're like having achievable goals.
Yeah.
So I have a team of silvers who are like, we're going to be GM by the end of the semester.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably not going to happen.
Probably not, yeah.
What is the next step up? Let's go for like a 5% goal, not a 100% goal out of the gate.
Sure.
Something that a team can do. So like if you have a team of all freshmen, will they mesh immediately? It's probably going to take a few months, and then you're in the middle of the season already.
Yeah, exactly.
Try to set a spot that they can actually hit,
Yeah.
and build onto it every year.
Great, that's awesome. Anybody else team culture goals, some things? Yeah, you really quick.
Yeah, I mean, we've got spatterings of like what we do for our routine, but really I need to try to bring that all together better and then push that on my team captain and then everyone else to say, here's now what we're going to do.
Right.
Yes, we do like a team lunch before each
Yeah.
match, but there's more to it.
Right. Key thing is better there too, because I think it's like we hold ourselves sometimes to different standards than we hold our players, and I think that's a mistake. Because I think it's really easy to try and be like, well, I'm just going to set a perfect structure like Ascoft's got, and I'm fixed. But the reality is like we also can't execute everything at the same time because we have to build habits for ourselves. So it's the key thing is like those slow steps for ourselves as well. You were raising your hand as well.
Yeah. Student comes before athlete and student athlete.
Yes.
Pretty big on that.
Absolutely.
We don't let our kids play if they have a single active F, but we also require study tables and have juniors and seniors to sign up to tutor each subject area.
Perfect.
So like they know that they have to get their business in line because typically a good student will also be a good player.
Yeah.
The vice versa is not always the case.
Yes.
And so if you get that in line first, the rest
makes sense.
If it had nothing to do with Overwatch, it is this mentality of I need to be excellent for myself.
Correct.
I can take care of that.
Yeah, of course, of course. You had something as well?
Yeah, for me, it started with a common catchphrase for me. At my previous institution, my goal was play smart, play together.
Yeah.
Say it before and after every speech. And I made this, I went to the seniors like, this is corny. I was like, I know, but just say it earnestly at the time and just like trick the freshmen. Like you can say it sarcastically, but as they graduated, as the freshmen looked up to those seniors, they bought fully in.
Yeah.
And over time, everybody was fully invested in the culture.
All right.
And they had one unifying factor. I think this is our
Great, great. Anyone else? One more goal? Yeah.
I know there's a lot of college people in here, but from a high school level, oftentimes it's really difficult to get kids who participate in esports to like buy into the school culture as a whole.
Yeah.
See themselves as an entirely different group.
Yep.
And so, like at my school in particular, we have really great school culture because it's a really small community. So trying to get them to buy into that and buy into themselves, that they are part of that culture, they're part of that success story, and they're there for a reason.
Right, exactly. I think a lot of us work with kids at the age of where like individuality is the most important thing, and it is the most important thing, but I think our individuality can be amplified by being an important ingredient in something that's bigger than ourselves, and that takes time to buy in. There isn't any one moment where it clicks, right? Like you were saying, right? It takes time for that to develop, but like ultimately we can start off with the corny catchphrases, but all of a sudden you're like, actually I can kind of see where that catchphrase actually has some meaning, right? And that takes process. So what we'll do is we'll take like a 5-10 minute break just because I want people to be able to stretch their legs, use the bathroom if you need to. One last slide we'll pull up here is these are just a few books that I recommend if you are interested in learning more about team culture. There's a lot of information today. I don't recommend buying them all at once and reading them all through because that's definitely something I would have done. But I recommend all of these. I think that there's different levels of seriousness, but they all come with different flavors that I find. I'll leave this up, by the way. You don't have to, there's no rush. I'll leave this for the next 5-10 minutes up, but highly recommend them. And you can take so many nuggets, goals, things that you can actually apply to the esports world from this. So like I said, 5-10 minutes. If you guys want to keep talking at your tables, go for it. We're not going to move to the next thing for another 10 minutes. If you guys have any questions, need to use the restroom, now's the time to do it. Yeah, of course.
I have a little niche question.
Go for it.
The no-win scenario. I know it doesn't happen and it didn't happen in OWL except for Shanghai season 1.
Yeah, thank you.
But like,
cheers.
Hey, look at that.
There you go.
We have a school, Alex, we have a school in our state that is like the juggernaut, far and away, disparaging skill deck between 1 and 2.
Yeah.
They're basically all contender splitters.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of a no-win scenario against them. How would you approach that with your team and everyone?
Yeah, you have to redefine win because you have to understand that you have to communicate that guys, first off, be honest. We're not gonna, it's fine. We know that, right? But think of that match as an opportunity to train skills that you might not be developing at other teams. So there will be points in life that those players are going to have matchups, IRL, where they're just impossible to win, right? But they have to be able to still make that matchup, like that sort of stress, productive. And so when you look at a no-win scenario, You need to redefine the win as being like, let's win a handful of team fights.
So we got second, and they were like thrilled. They were happier than the team
Yes.
that won, unironically.
Yes. Yeah.
But so I guess to re-angle that question I'm asking, if there was no such thing as a no win, how would you, if you were like, no, we are going to at least, like,
yeah,
we're going to go down screaming type thing, do you adjust how you're approaching that match?
Yes, you would play dirty. You would play cheese comps, you would be unpredictable, you would flank everybody all the time, you would specifically target somebody, you'd go for the most unconventional, weird maps possible, you would play compositions that they've never played versus before. It's why teams like Clockwork Vendetta and Team Avoided have done well in contenders in the past just by being corny and cancer. And so if you were really trying to win the match, fight dirty constantly.
Know your comp and they're not going to know it.
Exactly. And just throw chaos in the mix constantly. Break the rules, don't play, don't push, don't pull, flank, gank, hide, spawn camp, do everything wrong.
We did that. It didn't work, but we tried.
But there's a chance, right? You know, it's still a dice roll.
You're not going to beat them at the game, they're obviously.
Exactly, so it's still a dice roll. And I think that's all, and if it's hack, that's in of itself a good skill to know. It's like when you have to win, when you can't win, you have to play dirty. And I think that's a good strat to know.
Okay, no, I appreciate it.
Just because it doesn't work doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea.
Fair enough.
I don't have a card to give you, but what if I give you a Twitch Prime sub?
Yeah, if you can have a card, whatever.
Thanks,
Firstborn son, sorry.
Okay, I'll think about it.
No problem. Yeah.
So, that's a lot of what
Yeah.
Last time, this is funny. You were talking about, I think it was a moment, like you talked about chairs, right? And one of the biggest for us was we played against Q here in Go for our B team, and we weren't winning. We just, his team was, he was playing on a laptop, which was even better at the time, so it was even demoralizing. They ended up winning the whole thing, but we go, we're like, okay, we're just going to eliminate Susie, who was the Ana player at the time.
Right.
And that was our whole goal for the rest of it. We played through Lijiang, played through I think Nepal, and I just at that we couldn't kill it once because it's one of the most demoralizing things ever happened in the history of my Overwatch, and I always attribute it because Q was just a great leader.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, exactly. I know how they can feel. It's frustrating, definitely frustrating for sure. But you gotta give credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
All right, so. We'll start now. Like I said, if you guys didn't get a chance to get all your talking done or other questions, I'll be available afterwards, no big deal. But we're gonna move into the second section, which is team practice. I like to split team practice into 3 categories. It's gonna be your scrimmages and your scrimmage coaching. It's gonna be your team review and your individual review, and all 3 are important. And again, remember the most important thing is this is gonna be tailored based off of your team expectations. Obviously, if you're at an Overwatch League level, looking at like Ascoft schedule, that's gonna be different than if you're coaching with Silvers, scrimmaging once per week, right? It's gonna be totally different. And I think having a game plan or idea of how you're approaching each of these things, because I think each of them are a little bit different. So 3 ingredients of practice. Let's talk about scrimmaging first. So effective practice is the ingredient that separates knowledge from skill. My favorite question that I get in Twitch chat, only 100 talents per stream, is Spilo, what rank are you? And I'm like, well, I'm masters in all roles. And like, wow, only masters. Well, I'm like, well, I hit grandmaster. Oh, really? Then why aren't you good at the game? I like to say that if Overwatch was played at 0.25 speed, I would be the greatest player in the history of Overwatch. But the problem is it's not just the mechanics, because that's the obvious thing. Oh, I don't have the mechanics that those pro players have. It's more about the decision making in the moment is so fast and so rapid that it's the difference between knowledge and skill. So when you're teaching Overwatch, it's not good enough to tell the players what to do, how to do it. You have to train it, which is why we talk about habits so frequently. It's why stupid coaches can be actually effective coaches, because even if they don't necessarily have the best strategy, if they allow players to actually develop and train those habits, they're often more effective than the biggest, yappiest coaches. That's definitely not me. So that's gonna be your question, is like, how do I make my scrimmages effective at drilling what I need to drill? So good practice is one of the most misunderstood concepts. First off, consistent scrim schedule is crucial. If you're not scrimmaging consistently, you're screwing yourself over. I don't care if it's once per week. It just needs to be consistent, and competitive scrims are a must. The best environment for flow state or just learning in general is gonna be right at your skill level or a little bit above. In other words, you should be challenged in every scrim if possible. And this is where social connection matters so much, because if you have been scrimmaging in Overwatch 2, you've probably had to deal with the SR ranges of looking for scrims where people are like, oh, I'm a top 500 in season 1 of Overwatch 1, right? And you're like, okay, you end up dumpstering those people, or you get dumpstered and you just don't, you need to find teams that like, wow, that was a good scrim, get to know them, add their manager, add their players, consistently scrim them. You need to develop relationships relationships with other managers and coaches. Like Pioneer was talking about earlier, right? Having teams that you can drill with as well. A lot of really good stuff from his thing as well. You need to be finding teams that you can develop those relationships with so that you can actually have good scrimmage value, whatever that may look like. I think developing good relationships, we talked about that. And then we need to talk about scrim coaching. Simple, not sexy. Do not teach prompt. The teaching is done in review. The teaching is not done in scrims. You have to remember that. One of the biggest mistakes I see new coaches make, I think part of it's because when you're trying to trial for a team, you're trying to show off, is you don't teach during a scrimmage. You prompt. Pepper, just like the jiu-jitsu tournaments, right? How many times do we have people coaching these jiu-jitsu tournaments from the sides and you can tell they have no experience because they're actively like micromanaging the person that's wrestling? You don't do that. When you're in the middle of scrim coaching, even between maps, you shouldn't be taking 12, 15, 20 minutes to explain exactly what we went wrong, unless that's a specific thing, like the goal of the scrimmage where both teams are taking the time to analyze. But you can't do that. All you need to be going is go into the scrim with a goal or goals, remind the players of those goals. Let's talk about exactly how that's going to look like in this map, and maybe we'll revisit what went wrong that map. It needs to be quick. It needs to be prompts. A lot of time when I do private coaching right now, especially for repeat students, we do a lot of live coaching. I'll say, jump into competitive. This is what we're working for. And this is what my live coaching looks like because I am the best in the world at it. Where should you be positioned? Where should you be positioned? Good. Okay. Where should you be positioned? And that's my live coaching, about 90% of the time. And that's basically all it is to it, because really the player should already have the concepts that you talked about at that point in time. And all you're doing is being that prompt and building those habits of what they need to be doing, not just in scrimmages, but also in official matches as well. And that takes practice, and that's really what your job is. I remember when I was coaching Uprising Academy and the complete dumpster fire that was. And basically one thing I learned, guys, I tried everything. I tried everything with Uprising Academy because we just were an awful team with awful players and an inexperienced coach. And I'm not joking, I had players in Discord and TeamSpeak simultaneously. And then I would be in TeamSpeak with them, telling them like what angles they should be considering. And then we did this, and I tried everything, and basically it went full circle. It's simple. You prompt, you don't teach, that's all you can do. That's all you need to be worrying about. It's just too fast. The game moves too quickly for you to be able to actually properly teach. Repetitive, simple, and not pushing for too long. Obviously, if you're doing multiple scrim blocks, you need to make sure that you're not grinding over and over again. You want to keep things simple. And also, this is a key goal that I learned with Uprising as well, is you need to adjust the goals depending on what you're practicing. Nothing sucks more than going into a scrim like, guys, we're going to practice our rotations versus a brawl team. Oh wait, this is a spam team. Oh crap, right? So you need to be willing to either have goals that are pretty much generally applicable no matter who you're playing, whether it's like communicational goals or planning goals or positioning goals, or if you are going to be preparing for a specific team, you need to be scrimmaging the team that provides those things as well. And I also don't think you need to always be talking or yapping, and I realize the irony of me saying that. You don't always have to come up with some brilliant solution. I think especially even after like bad maps, like we lost really badly. Now what should we do, guys? Oh no. Thank goodness coach will give us a brilliant solution of what adjustment we need to make. How many times have you guys seen this professional coaches talk about, yeah, well, we were really struggling in that match and I made that last second adjustment? This stuff doesn't happen. I can tell you 99% of the time they're either full of bull or it was kind of completely unrelated to what they're talking about. Your players are prepared or they're not prepared, especially in the game of Overwatch. You're not making sideline adjustments or formation adjustments. They go in, they play the composition, and you see what happens. Your job as an Overwatch coach is to prepare your players to be thinking on the fly on their own, and whether it's in a scrimmage or in a match, you don't need a brilliant coach. You just need to be there and be consistent. I just find scrim coaching to be often overrated, and now we're gonna talk about what is not overrated, which is team review. So, John Wooden is very famous for being, in my opinion, maybe the greatest coach in sports history, at least in recent sports history. And he had a very, very fun way of teaching. And he said, explanation, then demonstration, then imitation, and then repetition, and repetition, and repetition, repetition, repetition. And you may go, wait, well, that's not what he says. That's because I made it better, because I'm a better coach than John Wooden. For one thing, I'm not dead. So first off, explanation is basically teaching what you need to teach. This is exactly, hey guys, this is what off angles are. This is why they matter. This is what an off angle looks like. Of course, it's Spilo explaining an off angle thing, right? So you're going to talk about like why off angles are and why they matter and teaching the concept, okay? From there, you're going to demonstrate the concept. Now, we're not playing basketball, so I'm not going to drop and dribble, okay? I'm going to show, okay, this is what an off angle looks like. This is why it matters. And you're going to basically demonstrate what you taught. So we're step 2. Step 3 is going to be the imitation. And this is the concept that everybody misses, and I don't know why. I think it's because it's not egotistical enough, because I just like hearing myself talk. But now I got to shut up, and I have to have the player show me back. So what I might do in a review is say, okay, this is why it's important. This is what it looks like. Let's skip to our team fight. How should it look like here? and they have to tell you. They have to imitate it through the review, not just in the gameplay, but in the review. And so they have to tell you, okay, well, what about the angle here? And what about the angle there? And you might even let them be wrong a little bit, but they're trying to imitate what you just taught them. And then this is the other big one, obviously, it's the repetition. So now that they've attempted to try and apply what you're just talking about, you just need to let them do it again and again and again. And this is where my insert is, review. Because in the realm of Overwatch, it's not just good enough to repeat. You got to go back and go like, there's our attempt at it. What do you guys think? We tried to set up off angles here. How did that go? How could we do it better? Oh, well, you know, we could have done this, or I think that we tried this, but then you review it, you discuss it, you go back and you try it again. You come back and you review it, you go back and you try it again. You go review it, and then you go back and you try it again. So between the repetition, you don't just mindlessly grind, you're constantly, quickly, efficiently reevaluating exactly how you're approaching the practice so that they're actually able to see the mistakes in real time. Does that make sense? Okay, very important, the imitation though. Don't just teach the concept and go try and practice it. They need to try and teach it back to you, okay? Let's see here, prioritizing simple solutions and concepts, that's the key thing. Try to keep whatever you are teaching to be very important and very simple, and ask questions. Teach the concept that haven't teach it back to you, then go and apply it in Scrim. And now we're gonna pull up a little video here of exactly what that may look like. So guys, we're gonna team review right now. So this is Kings Row. And this is one of the platinum coaches, one of the scuffed collegiate coaches, or teams that I was working with. And let's pause right here. So if I was conducting a team review, this is exactly how it would go. All right, guys, so basically, we're playing the Jungle Queen comp here. This is, by the way, a team with silvers and grandmasters, right? So we're trying to execute on this composition. We think it plays to our strengths. Does anyone see any major issues with how we're setting up right now? Raise your hand. Yes, what do you see?
Queen is kind of out of LOS.
Great, Queen is out of LOS. Okay, guys, so why is that a problem?
She'll fall over.
She'll fall over, right? So we got to make sure that, and this is where we teach, okay? So the big thing here is that we're just not synchronized with our pressure right now. Like however we want to play this composition, we could be very flexible. We actually need to synchronize the pressure at the same time, even if it's from multiple angles, whether it's grouped up, it doesn't matter. But right now we're totally desynced. So the question is, why? And this is one that you obviously can't answer because you're not a player playing in this lobby. But I do like to ask that question. Why? We know this is important, or maybe now we know it now, but why is this mistake happening? I don't remember this session. It was probably some sort of miscommunication, or people weren't listening, or we weren't clear with where we were fighting. But you need to get the root cause. You need to not just say, this is bad, idiots, slap them upside the head and go put them back in the scrim. You need to ask them, why was this mistake happening in the first place? And it might be, okay, Red Knight on Jungle Queen here needs to do a better job clarifying where we're taking fights, and then the team needs to listen better, okay? So then that's it. That's our review. We don't sit here about Swaggy Fish misusing Baptiste shift, or maybe we could use our bash and grenade better. That stuff's for individual review. You can definitely insert it here and there. But then all we have to do from here on out is look at fights back to back to back to back. Where should we have set up here? Where should we have set up here? Were we synchronized here? Were we synchronized here? And you see now that we have a theme for the review, we know what we're looking for, and we're actually kind of ignoring some of the other little details that aren't that important. We'll keep going with this one actually here, because I want to do a similar concept. And if you were coaching this team here, we'll skip ahead to Colosseo here, my favorite map. Raise your hand if you were coaching this team, if you were coaching this team and you were to teach a concept, you have about, your team blue here, let's be very clear, team blue, what would you teach here? What would you teach? What would you teach? What do you think?
I would have them give up space.
Okay, and what do you mean give up space here?
I would have them go back and maybe go back to their own high ground, take fight there so they have high ground advantage, and push the bot after winning that fight.
Sure, so you're saying recognizing when we have a push advantage and taking a favorable fight. Okay, that's a theme of an entire review right there. And you would need several examples. You explain why it's important, and then have a couple of timestamps where like, okay, now that you guys understand this, where should we have taken the fight in this situation? What else? Give me a totally different topic.
They are all grouping up on the bot, learning to play away from the bot, not necessarily, or understanding that they don't necessarily need to play on point.
Yes.
The entire time of the game.
Yes. Yes. Okay. What do you guys see about the ultimate usage right now? We got.
The Symmetra ult's out, but like they're not getting aggressive. They're not.
Yeah. It's totally distinct, right? In fact, if we go back just a few seconds here, which would have been helpful to give you guys just a few minutes of concept, look at how this fight is executed. So Lucio's doing, I don't know what Lucio's doing. Okay, but yeah, there's a clear problem here where we're using the ultimate to take space, but they're not really fighting there. And so what we would do is, I promise you, you can probably bet a lot of money that this kind of mistake in terms of, okay, actually I think that there's a BAP one that follows afterwards. Anyway, we'll leave it there. But there's probably a couple of times where we didn't really set up our ult pushes at all. And now we have another theme. And again, this is something that you could teach. Why is it important? Well, we have to use an ultimate not just to take space, but to try to force cooldowns. All we're really getting out of this is a amp speed, maybe. That's not a really great trade for us, and maybe a little bit of forward push. So we talk about, like, okay, then how would we set these fights up? And this one is so important because we can actually talk about Simwall. We could talk about setting up Death Blossom. We could talk about setting up Beat, BAP window. Heck, we could talk about setting up Earth Shattered, even though that one's a little bit trickier, right? So basically, again, we have a theme of the review. We have something that we could teach. And again, the best question is not just to teach them, but asking questions. Okay, what do you guys think about this next fight here that we have BAP window, we're on high ground. Where should we set this up? And the best part is you can even ask them to be creative with it. Don't ask them to give them the boring answer. Come up with a creative fight solution. So that's really what team review is all about. And this takes two really important character traits that if you don't have now, you're going to have to develop. It's maturity and wisdom. Maturity is going, I see all these individual errors, or maybe even I see big errors, but it's not what we're putting emphasis on right now. So I'm going to do the really mature thing and ignore it. I'm going to let it go. Especially some of you guys that are working with those lower ranked players and lower ranked teams, you're just going to have to learn to ignore some things. Not because it's not important, but because it's not important enough to matter. Because you can only give so many things emphasis. Now, the wisdom part of it is to know what to ignore. Because we had 3 really excellent concepts that we could all teach, but which one's the most important? Not just in a vacuum, but with your team. Which ones are you most comfortable teaching? Which one do you think is the most relevant consistently? And that's going to be your skill as a coach. And then ultimately being able to cycle through those goals over time and hopefully have development. That takes maturity and that takes wisdom. The worst coaches I know, as I brought up earlier, are the ones that don't know how to choose, don't know how to prioritize, and ultimately never prioritize. They just throw random crap at a wall. Don't be that guy. Okay, that's the best thing I can tell you. As teams mature, I would open up opportunities and encourage avenues for players to highlight and set their own team goals. This is something that Ascoft spoke about as well, but I'm the one teaching right now. But the more I work with players and the more I worked with teams, it's actually funny how times changed and shifted to where the players were coming to me with themes that they thought they needed to be. And in fact, there were times with London where I actually would assign players team review responsibilities. I'd take 2 or 3 players and said, you're doing the team review tomorrow. Good luck, right? Now, I would generally have an idea of what exactly was, I would say, this is what I want you guys to put emphasis on, but they had to come up with the priorities, and that stuff sticks so much better because they're the ones coming up with that theme. So again, to revisit John Wooden, it's gonna be teaching, right? Teaching exactly what you're doing, explanation, demonstration, imitation, repetition, review, rinse and repeat. And sometimes players need to be taught, sometimes players need to be led. It's up to you to decide which is which, right? Do I need to teach this concept, or do I need to take the brains that we have and give them the structure so they can actually teach their ideas? So we'll go back to the slide here and we'll move on from here. Prepare. One thing in common, whether it's a more player-led review or a team-led review, prepare. You must go into the review with an idea of exactly what you're looking at. In fact, that's probably up there with like player management, the most important coaching skill. Not scrum coaching, not the talking, it's your ability to prepare a themed and consistent team review. You should try and aim to be as consistent and concise and clear as you possibly can. Okay, I think that's about it for that. I think we're gonna move into individual coaching. So this one is gonna piggyback a lot of the things we talked about with team review, but there's one especially important thing: connect, don't just teach. Your most important thing with individual review is to develop a relationship with the player further. It's to have a conversation. If you guys have watched any of my individual reviews on my coaching channel, there are some of the reviews that I've had where we actually don't look at gameplay once for the entire hour conversation. And people are paying me for this, man, it's great. But they want to talk about their life, their relationships, the things that they're working on, their mindset with the game, their real life habits. I think it's really scary to be like, man, I'm not a therapist. Like, I don't know. You don't need to be a therapist. You just need to care about that individual person. And your individual reviews, when you're working with teams, should start off like that. How are you doing? How's it going? How's your relationship with the team? How are you feeling? How are you enjoying practice? Is there anything you want to talk about right now? Is there anything that any frustrations with the team, any feedback from me that you may have? And that's not just good because, oh, it's important to develop that relationship with the player and that they can feel like and get things off their chest. That's obviously important, but it actually allows them to feel more personally invested into what you're about to say. Because if I have a personal connection with you, what I'm saying is not just going to go in one ear out the other. You're going to actually listen to what I have to say, and that only comes from time one-on-one, and that's exactly what individual review is. So develop that relationship. A good conversation is malleable with who you're talking to, the same thing with the review. And obviously, this shouldn't need to be said, but walk away with something actionable. Don't just say, this is a mistake, this is a mistake. If you can get in there with a theme, just like the team review, even better. And I don't want to hear, oh, I'm not good at individual reviews, or I don't know how to play that character that well. Bull. You don't need to know how to play the character well at the individual review effectively. You need to look at fights where the player was unclear, unsure, or maybe even just fights that you just lost, and just be like, is there anything you could have done better here? Could you use your cooldowns better? Could you have positioned better? Admit your ignorance. You don't have to come in there and pretend like, oh, I'm a genius. Like, honestly, like, was that the best position? What do you guys think? What do you think? Like, be somebody that can have productive conversations, even if you are a total moron. That's happened with me, right? I mean, obviously, I put a lot of time in trying to understand how each character is played, but sometimes I've walked in with high-level players on niche characters, and I felt a little bit above my pay grade, but that's not why I'm there. My there is to have that productive conversation and be something to talk with. A little bit like a therapist, but it is what it is. And the same thing with applying John Wooden's concepts as well. It's the same thing. You teach a concept if the player needs to be taught. You show them why it's important. You have them teach it back to you. Hey, this is why I want you to position like this. Where do you think you should position now? Teach me, right? And then just repeat and review and review and review. So last thing I'll say with individual review is, well, two things really. So the teaching or the leading. We talked about this with team review, right? Sometimes players need to be taught. Sometimes players need to be led. The conversation example I just used is a great example of the difference between the two, where I don't know anything about the character, but I'm going to have a productive conversation. That's leading, okay? So Hadi, a lot of our reviews were a 50-50 because he was a very smart player. I didn't have to teach him too much, but there were some things I needed to teach him. Hey, this is good, but you need to develop this habit better, and this is why it's important. A player like Shax, same kind of thing. A lot of productive conversation, was very, very good at Tracer, was probably the best in the West besides Kevster, but I was really good at Tracer, and so we had a lot of really productive conversations. And a lot of his stuff was actually mental oriented, because he lost a lot of confidence in himself as the season went along, so a lot of our conversations had less to do with gameplay. Now, Sparker, Sombra, that's all I'm going to say. Okay, there was a period of time where we were trialing 3 different players at Sombra, and basically I had to teach every single player that we were working with how to play Sombra, and that meant that initially there was a lot of teaching, but even in that first teaching, it was still teaching the concept and having to explain it back to me. So with Sparker, it was more about him listening to me teaching, and then teaching it back to me. Not as much like, hey, how are you? What do you think about Sombra here? Like, he had to know some concepts, right? But ultimately, it always comes back down to that. Okay, so any questions so far? I'll actually give you guys just a quick second for questions before we do one. Yeah, really quick.
We're all here because we're endemic to Overwatch.
Yes.
We'll have our kids that are better than us, and they just always will be, so that's
yes.
addressed. But we also all coach other games too. So how would you adjust that perspective on the better player than you if it's a game you're just not endemic to whatsoever?
Yeah, so you have the player explain the concept to you. You flip it on its head and say, okay, what should you be doing? In fact, that's something that I use even when I'm coaching bronze players with characters I'm very familiar with. I'll say, okay, what is your character good at? Tell me. Now for them, I'm doing it because I want to get the conversation started, and also I want to see if there's any errors in their understanding of how the character works so that I can correct them. But if I ask the same question versus a character, like if I were to jump in, you got to coach Smash, Coach Spilo. I don't know anything about Smash, right? Bowser, yeah. So that's it, okay? But I would say, okay, so what's the purpose of Smash? What are the priorities? Are you doing those things? If so, yeah, great. If not, why not? What can we be doing better? Is there any things that you guys are, just have the conversation. It's okay. I think the biggest thing is like, guys, we don't have to know everything. That's not what a coach really is. Like, it's great to know things. It's important to know things, but it's not your priority. And so if you ever find yourself feeling kind of stupid, admit ignorance and just be like, okay, you teach me what you should be doing. Because not only by then will you actually educate yourself, but that kind of honesty I think is important, setting a culture where it's like, hey, I give you feedback, you give me feedback. It's not bad to look stupid, right? That's what I would say. Anything else here? Yes?
Listen, piggyback off of his, first year Overwatch coach, solid bronze 1 player.
Nice.
Most characters.
Nice.
I would just throw it out there, and the kids know that I play, but I'm not the greatest.
Yeah.
By any means, and it's just I use it as a tactic to say, this is what I would have done, and I'm like, you're stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then what would you have done?
Exactly.
This gets them
Exactly.
past what they had done that time.
Exactly.
This person or that one.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just,
Yeah, you don't have to earn respect through your ability to do. You don't even have to earn respect through your ability to explain or teach or know. You just have to earn respect with your ability to lead. And yes. Please, go for it. Yeah.
So this is, I'm going into my 3rd year of Overwatch coaching. I have 2,200 hours in the game. I'm mid-plat at best. There's a lot of improvement I need to make. And about 1,800 of those hours are on hamster. So when somebody...
Do not shake his hand.
You have a problem.
Yes. So when somebody comes to me asking for Widow gameplay, I don't know much about Widow, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but that's why the macro fundamentals are so important. That's why I might not play a lot of Widow, but I know that a sniper, when they're this far away from the monkey, they probably need to work on their positioning a little bit. So it's exactly that. It's, well, you tell me where you think you should be positioned. You're playing on Widowmaker right now. Why are you 5 feet away from the enemy monkey when he didn't jump on you? Why are you like right around this corner, putting yourself in a bad position? So it's really just like knowing the basics of the game and leading them to the water. 9 times out of 10, I've found that they will go ahead and drink.
It's especially if you can ask the question like non-passive aggressively as well, like, you know, because sometimes, like, for example, like the Widowmaker, it's like, why are they that close? I mean, they know not, so what's causing them to make that mistake? And they could be like, well, I feel like if I don't, you know, shoot the monkey, nobody's going to. And you can start to kind of get to like, okay, exactly why are these mistakes? Sometimes it's just ignorance, indifference, I get distracted. That's usually, but sometimes it's like a root, like they misunderstand something or concerned about something. Like one of the big mistakes that you see when you're coaching support players is they heal. That's all they do, right? Especially lower rank supports. Why? Because, oh, they'll die if they don't. And so if you can get them to say that, then you're like, gotcha. Now I can address that problem. But if I just say, hey, idiot, do more damage, they're just going to follow my advice without really understanding why. So you really, even if you do know better, you really need to be asking questions constantly. And prepare. Obviously, the more experience you get, the less you have to prepare. That's the luxury of being a world genius. But you don't get there without studying ahead of time. You do have to prepare ahead of time. You need to study. You need to come up with some concepts. Or even just, here's a great way, just come up with some questions that you're going to ask when you coach the person. Because I think that, again, the best thing you can do for reviews is to prepare. Mr. Pioneer, yes.
Kind of already answered my question, but I was going to ask about, obviously, team-led reviews, preparation.
Yes.
Fair amount. But I assume sometimes you get into an individual review that is, you haven't seen it before, right?
Yeah.
How do you keep yourself from getting in the weeds? At what point do you realize, okay, this is the most important thing I need to talk about with you?
Yeah, great question.
I looked at you for 2 minutes, and there's this long list.
Yes.
How do you figure out?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a little bit of the advantage because I have literally 10,000 hours experience coaching people one-on-one. It's my best skill. But if you don't know every character to that level, the best thing that you can do is prepare, studying ahead of time, watching through it ahead of time. And then crucially is to come up with questions. And if you're watching it for the first time, don't pause in the first team fight and analyze the first mistake for 16 minutes, please. Take note of it mentally, look for it again, see if it happens again. Because sometimes you might explain something in depth and go, oh, they don't do it again. That's it. That was just a freak accident, right? So you need to go in and you need to kind of let the gameplay speak for itself, at least for the first few minutes, to see if you can develop patterns. Because pattern recognition is everything as a coach. It's knowing, okay, this player is consistently making the same mistake or has the tendency to make this decision. And then it comes again back to the maturity and the wisdom, knowing what to prioritize, whether that's the big thing that they only do a couple of times, but it tosses the entire team fight, or the little rescoping mechanic that they have with Ana, the habit that they have. That's not really that big of a deal, but man, they do it every 30 seconds. They really need to break that habit. So I think just let the gameplay speak for itself. Try to focus on one aspect, and ultimately, if you are really in over your head as a coach and like, I don't understand this character at all, focus on an ingredient of that player, whether that's the positioning, the cooldown usage, heck, even the ultimates. You could just go through. I used to do this all the time with was it our support players? I would just look through a VOD, like an entire scrim block, literally 2 hours of gameplay, and we'd only timestamp their ultimate use. And we talk about how their ultimate's doing. And that was the entire review, right? They might have had issues with cooldowns, but we wanted to focus on ultimate. So if you are in a little over your head, just break it down into a chewable concept, something that's easy for you to be able to break down and ask questions about, and move on from there. But yeah, prep. Prep covers a multitude of sins, because you're going to be able to at least run through things again and again. Okay, so let's finish this up here. Let's actually do what we did exactly with the team culture thing. Let's set some goals. What can you do to improve team practice, whether it's the way that you're handling scrims, you're coaching in scrims, team practice, individual practice. And as always, if you have any questions, blood-curdling scream, go to the routine. All right, let's roll. We've got about 10, 15 minutes. That's fine. I think, and for the reason why tanks are generally better for the quote-unquote shot calling is I wouldn't even give them that broad of a responsibility unless they deserve it. Sure. But one thing a tank does generally do is call the cycle. So there's a Korean term called the turn, T-U-R-N, which basically says like the timing of when we're taking a cooldown trade, whether that's a poke comp or dive comp or brawl comp, whatever. And generally the tank is usually the guy calling that because he often has the tank cooldown that's the most important to play around, whether that's JQ shout, Winston bubble, a Reinhardt push, even something as simple as like the Sigma turns the shield. That's when snipers peak, because that's when we can win the shield advantage. So there's a lot of comps that may not have a very clear term, but you need to make sure that whoever is calling the timing of that peak is calling the timing of that peak. Otherwise you have major timing issues.
And you don't probably, if a support player or an EPS player wants to be the ult tracker,
no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, ult tracking is generally like more team-oriented, but somebody prompts it. I used to work on this with Admiral, and we'd say you don't have to ult track, but you do have to ult prompt.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the conversation has to happen. It has to happen quickly, and maybe Admiral needs help.
What ults do you think they have?
Yeah. Okay. So ults.
Like, hey,
right.
Someone might know
right.
But you don't.
Right.
I know
it's slightly more efficient to have one person have the responsibility, but I also want to make sure that people have the comfort to be able to correct the ult tracker if necessary, and because they need to be listening. Because what's the point of the ult tracker if nobody's listening?
Those skills, just one person is
right, and also.
Primarily
The whole point of the ult track is then people to think about that and then use that information to make a plan. And if it's only one person ult tracking, a lot of times they'll just say the thing and it just goes into the void and nobody cares. You need to use the ult track, otherwise it's literally worthless.
So it's not so much about who is doing what kind of communication, it's just making sure those roles are defined.
Yeah, the roles that need to be, when are we engaging? What's the plan? Are we ult tracking? And then obviously little things like scouting and relevant cooldowns. But like, if you can't even tell me like what the plan is and like, I think kind of like what Ascoft said is just having clear responsibilities that's necessary. And generally, the better the team, the more democratic those responsibilities are. But sometimes it's hard. You kind of have to, your job. And eventually the democracy will come of its own, but in the meantime, the job has to get done.
When you say the better, like, just overall, like, the more skilled the team and the more mature the team,
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back. I wrote it down whenever you're talking about scrim coaching. So you said simple next MC, don't teach prompt.
Yes.
So like, where are we positioning? And I was like, how do you get the notes at ears? I have a really bad time, both when I was a player and like having to do IGL.
Yeah.
And whenever I would, like I coached.
Yeah.
And it's not when we're reviewing because they're there to learn, they're ready to,
Yeah.
they're ready to engage. But whenever they're playing a video game, doesn't matter who's asking any questions, they're hyper-fixating on who they're about to shoot, they're hyper-fixating on literally anything else that's just like me, I. So how do you get them out of just the tunnel vision to like open their ears?
Yeah. I think the key thing is just to make sure that you're prompting like between maps. Sometimes between team fights, I will sometimes unmute and let out a blood-curdling scream if necessary. But the key thing, the most prompting needs to happen between fights. So like if we're okay, let me explain what I'm saying. Prompt them between maps to prompt themselves between fights. So guys, remember we need to be thinking about this between fights. We need to be thinking about this between fights. And if you got to unmute in the middle of the map, and not in the middle of a fight, but between fights, hey, plan, hey, track, hey, angles, whatever that prompt needs to be. Because you're right, once stuff starts to go crazy, they're just what's directly in front of them. So, I mean, you were just saying this, right? Play the rest. That's it exactly. You need to be playing the rest and utilizing your downtime to think. because once the downtime is over, there is no thinking, there's only action.
Now, how do you go about that if you're in a position where you're not necessarily able to be in the same room as them while they're playing the game?
Voice call?
Not necessarily allowed because streaming, because rules and guidelines.
You can't do anything. You can't do anything. Give them the prompt before the scrimmage between the map if you can. Do the best that you can. And also that's where you can assign. I've even had players that have the responsibility to prompt each other. Like it'll be like kind of like the Admiral thing. Like, hey, remember your job is to prompt everybody to help you with the ult track. That's your responsibility. Yeah.
That's the importance of having a team captain.
Yeah. Please.
What we do with our team is we've had an issue where they'll forget what was said 5 seconds ago when they started playing this game when it says start, right? And then it spawns. Before, whenever we do like our prep, we give them a sticky note and we said, write down one thing you're going to think about their entire day.
Yep.
And they write it down. It's a small sticky note. They put it right next to their monitor, right where they're going to check for if they have ammo or their health, whichever one they're playing. And that's almost always works.
And keep in mind, effective practice is never going to be 100%. People are always going to lose focus. They're always going to forget. I will be honest with you. I'm happy with myself if I'm trying to practice a new hero or whatever. If I remember to practice something 50 or 60% of team fights. Like if I get half, I'm happy. That's pretty good. I only autopiloted for half the game. So like I think it's just good to remember, it's like just don't expect the moon, the stars like immediately, like just expect, hey, anything's better than autopiloting for the entirety of the game. I have something for like a lot of old people like me that, by the time they get around to playing, they're like tired, distracted, whatever. It's the 2-fight rule. If we can be focused on this one concept for the first 2 fights of every map, you know what? We'll take it. That's good enough.
That's good enough. Give them low things to work through.
Yeah, because it'll drive you nuts going like, oh, we forgot again. Like, that's normal. It's going to happen.
And that reminds me, I can't remember who or where the research was, but it was essentially, and it kind of goes back to music again.
Yeah.
Practice 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
That's all you have, with intention. You
have
to practice intention
for
20 minutes.
Yep. Intentional practice.
A lot quicker than if you try to practice everything for 3 hours or whatever.
Oh, exactly.
Just doing 2 fights and you played 5 games. And you focus the first 2 fights.
It's a lot of practice. That's a lot of practice. Yeah, exactly. It's just making your practice effective and giving it that intention, like you said. So.
It's the Erickson et al. Study, the 10,000-hour study. Boris Shako, one of the best weightlifting coaches and powerlifting coaches of all time, he takes the ideology of practice doesn't make perfect practice
right.
makes perfect.
Yes.
You must be intentional with every single rep you do and do it to the best of your ability because the quality must be high. Because you can do something wrong over and over again, and that is the memory you ingrain into yourself.
Yes.
And so, in the 10,000 hours, that was only 20 minutes a day. They practice, they did a lot of relaxing, a lot of thinking about it. And
yes.
They put it into action. They put it with their most intention.
Exactly. That's why I'm a big hater of like triple scrim block days, because I think at that point in time, like you don't have the energy to give it the amount of effort required for change.
It's diminishing returns.
Well, it's not just diminishing returns. You also can develop bad habits. You can actually allow yourself to coast, because I remember there was a specific time in my life when I played a lot of high school football, right? And there was this one coach who we do wind sprints, right? And he would never tell us how many wind sprints we had left to do. So I would try as hard as I could, but 90% of the players would just kind of coast because they weren't sure. We might be working for a long time here. But if you're saying we have 3 sprints, guys, give it everything you got. That's gonna provoke change. People are gonna give it as hard as they can if it's 3 sprints, and they know how many sprints we got left. But if you have this indeterminate amount of practice, I remember those 3 scrim blocks at the professional level. You had players tilted and boomed and quiet and not going full effort and autopiloting. It's like, why are we here then? So
now, could you say with that analogy though that one of his ideas for that whole thing about saying how many left is trying to see if the whole team is going to give it their all for work?
It would be a mental toughness exercise, but you need to use those selectively. You treat it literally like trying to break the players down. It'd be the equivalent of like we had some scrim blocks where we would literally do exercise, 60 seconds of exercise between maps. We're trying to make the players miserable and fatigued and exhausted. If we're ever in that circumstance in a match where we have to play 5 matches back to back, it happens sometimes in the Overwatch League. How do you guys do in that circumstance? Can you, in which case, do 4 scrim blocks in a day. not rarely, once a month, once every 2 months, but just make them miserable. How can we do it? Can we survive? Can we survive? That becomes the skill. Can we survive? You know.
They go through that tough thing and still
Exactly. But that has to be
come back to the next practice.
right. Exactly. Right. But you don't exactly. You can't do that every day. So yeah. Okay. All right. So guys, 1 minute warning. We're gonna wrap this one up. I'm not gonna ask you guys for your goals like last time because we are running a little short on time. So we're gonna jump right into the next session. So if you need to use the bathroom, stretch your legs, I'll do that in the next few minutes.
As I was getting into esports coaching, like my dad's like a traditional athletics guy. He's like, John, what are you talking?
He's great.
So I finally caved. I read the book and I saw it out there.
There you go. Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna tell him this.
That's
So,
great.
like, you know,
That's perfect. That's sick. That's sick. That's awesome. Yeah, I love John Wooden. He's great.
Yeah. I actually had I printed out the pyramid of success.
Yes.
Like in my
Yes.
office and all that.
That's sick.
That's
sick.
That's been a big help actually too.
I've got a book on that one as well. Yeah, I enjoy it a lot.
Really?
It's a good one. Yeah, it's great. That's awesome.
But that's all I wanted to say.
That's awesome. Nice to meet you.
Don, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Don.
I met you briefly at the Overwatch League Grand Finals.
Yeah,
I don't know if
Toronto.
you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you probably met 2,000 people.
There's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool. That was a fun finals.
That was really cool. Actually.
Result was kind of like predictable, but the meta variety was fun. The event was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I was at Anaheim too. I've only been to Anaheim and Toronto.
Yeah.
I thought the atmosphere for Anaheim was like a little bit cooler. I don't know. Seeing like the confetti come down and all that, like being that close is cool. But Toronto was more fun because we got to meet more people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Dallas was weird. Dallas, because it was so much a part of a so much bigger event.
Yeah.
Honestly, Dallas was like such an ugly city. Like where I was at, it was like the roads were super confusing, and it was like. It was a fun event, but it was like really stressful. So
that's what I was considering going to Dallas. And I had a couple of my friends going, but like it wasn't enough for me.
Toronto was better.
Yeah, so I ended up I went to Denver and like visited my friends there. And we just watch party. Like,
there you go.
So really
that sounds fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds good. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, let's do it. Sure, of course.
My players who I
let's do it.
Messaged and said, hey. Thank you.
No problem. Cheers.
I sent them a message saying, hey, so this guy named Spilo is here talking about Overwatch. I don't know. I'm learning a few things. And then he's just immediately like, okay.
That's funny. That's funny.
I'm going to be on the opposite side of history here. I love 216. So, I mean, as soon as that first
yeah.
I used to coach Apex when we had Apex. And I do a lot of live tracking, so it's like old matches.
It's gorgeous.
Live track them as they're going, because there's no replay.
Yeah.
And like, this looks like football stuff.
Yeah.
This is the map that they won, so like, this is where we win. Do you think that, so I've tried to do it with Overwatch before, I was just saying, but like, do you think it'd be worth it to like do that same type of tracking here, even though there is a replay?
I mean, yeah, you could. I mean, the thing is just like, just find what you enjoy doing, the way that, like, the style that works best for you, and you feel like you could. The best thing is like, how good are you at communicating using that tool? And if the answer is I'm pretty good at it, then use it.
Because I've tried the epic picnic before, and it takes so long to like.
That's it, right? Like, that's where a stylistic choice is like, what allows you to be most confident, then that's going to be your best coaching tool. So yeah, absolutely roll with it. All right, so we're going to wrap up. I hate to interrupt again, but it's the last time I'll have to interrupt, surely. So we're on to part 3 of 3. This is going to be team macro. And you know, you guys, if you guys follow any of my stuff, you guys know how painful it is for me to say to simplify this concept when all I want to do is talk about all the nuances and all the details. And if you remember the start of our presentation, we used nurture, we used qualify, and we used clarify. And I want to emphasize that one more time. It is nice to hear yourself talk. It's great. Love it. But your ability and quality as a coach is going to be your ability to clarify and emphasize, teach, and hold people accountable to really simple macro concepts. Now, I did a video scuffed sitting in my pajamas on the couch with a phone for an hour, 10 minutes talking about the basic concepts, and those concepts haven't changed. It's what are we doing? What is the plan? When are we doing it? The timing of things. And where are we doing it? Spacing, off angles. Right? And this is all Overwatch is. This is all really any first-person shooters, and in many ways, mini games, period. This is how combat works in the real world. This is how combat works in the fake video game world as well. And so what you're going to be doing is we're going to be breaking you down each of these 3 concepts, how to teach it, how to approach it, how to coach it. And you can go way into detail of this. Like, there's like, when we look at planning, we talk about communicational structure, we talk about layering, we talk about compositional matchup, we talk about when, we talk about, again, communication, we talk about timing, we talk about synergy, we talk about going late as agreed. When we talk about spacing, we talk about off angles, we talk about main, we talk about rotations, we talk about clearing space, we talk about marking, denying off angles. There's so many concepts that you can break each of these into a million ingredients, but it really just boils down to this. And I want to encourage you that even though you may have a team full of grandmasters, this is all Overwatch is, and even at the highest level, oftentimes we revisit these concepts over and over and over again. We're playing one of the most difficult to execute games on Earth in terms of complication. It's unbelievably difficult. So to succeed, you really have to be able to simplify and then actively activate on these concepts in the moment, using your downtime between fights. So I'm known as somebody who introduces a ton of detail, but fundamentally it's important that you're boiling these things down simply as you possibly can for your players. So let's move on here. So let's talk about some example runs here. So we talk about the what, the when, the where. Let me make sure that we're on this. And I'm going to use this here. So I'm going to tell you guys exactly how I would do the what, the when, and the where. Let's talk about, let's do composition blue here. So tank, DPS, supports. We got a relatively short range tank, a relatively short range DPS line, and a relatively short range support line. So I'm going to be telling these guys that we generally wouldn't be playing in shorter sight lines. We can take off angles as necessary, but we're probably going to be playing closer to around point, pushing out as appropriate because that's the effective range of our characters. What we're going to try and do is probably hold point and shoot what's available. When are we going to do it? Well, we're going to try and synchronize our timing at the same time. And then where are we going to do it? Well, again, probably point, but maybe we can take an off angle as well. That's it. That's it. We could talk about the details about Lucio, Mark's ball, and how do we play versus their composition. But if you can answer those basic questions, that's pretty much it. If I'm coaching Team Red, what are we doing? How does Team Red's composition work? Well, we're going to be playing around our ball. Our ball's timing. When our ball goes in, that's when we're doing things, okay? What do we want to do when our ball goes in? Tracer should have an angle. Sojourn should be shooting, Zen should be shooting, and Brig should either be protecting Zenyatta or enabling an off angle herself. That's it. Now, how does that look like versus Team Blue? Well, that might take a little bit more nuance, maybe some adjustments. Where do we take the fight? What angles should we be holding? Where should my Brig be playing? But ultimately, it really just boils down to what do we want to be doing and where do we want to be doing it? And are we all on the same time? And if you can say, great, then you're doing the right thing. So let's practice this here. So I'm gonna let this play out here, and we're gonna go to a different map in a different composition entirely. I believe it's actually the same scrim. So Team Blue here, Team Red, very similar compositions here. Obviously running the real rat, so we love to see that. And my Lijiang Tower Control Center. What does Team Blue setup-wise? Let's say that they've won the fight. They're controlling point. What does Team Blue want to do? What's the plan? How does a neutral trade look like, regardless of what they're playing versus? After they've won the fight. Sure.
Like big space, show.
Okay, for what heroes are we taking space for? And what space do those characters want to control?
I mean, you could have Ryan walk up so Jump can spam that lane. Maybe.
Sure, so Ryan Junk's choke control. Okay, what about my Curie, Sojourn, Lucio? Anybody got any ideas?
I usually put Curie Sojourn on my high ground.
Why?
So they have an off angle and can heal.
Okay, what's unique about the off angle on point as opposed to an off angle in White Room?
Off angle on point gives them one, they can it's like they're 2 cross points.
Sure.
They have LOS on everyone, and they have more avenues of escape.
Sure. There's just more space, right? More open space. Why would that be advantageous for a Sojourn? More space compared to a Junkrat.
More you're at map control.
Right, she's a sniper kind of character. It's that simple, guys. It's really not that complicated, okay? We put our characters in positions where they're more effective, and that's it. Now, the timing side of things is really important too, because if I were to say Ryan Junk wants choke control, Sojourn wants an open sightline, theoretically, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. You guys see my mouse? Yes. We could hold the choke, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? That choke right here, and put our Sojourn all the way back and back high ground, but that would be nonsense, right? Why?
You could get easily picked off by a flanking hero.
Right. But also, if I'm holding choke here and Sojourn's holding choke here, are we fighting at the same time? No. Now, if I've got Ryan Junk Lucio here and Sojourn Kiri here, are we fighting on the same timing? Yes. And the difference is just where we're positioning. So your positioning allows your timing to be good, right? Now that's where you could start to delve into communicational structure, who calls where we're gonna fight. But really, it's just looking at my character says, this character plays this range sight line, where do I wanna hold? And that's it. That's all. That's really all it is to it. Now, you notice that one thing that we've ignored here. We've ignored ultimates. We'll get to that one in a little bit because that definitely changes things just a little bit. We could also talk about like how a Team Red approaches because Team Red is actually trolling the lobby right now. Now, Team Blue's Junkrat is not back yet, but if you guys were to coach Team Red, what would be the simplest way of critiquing Team Red's setup right now?
Don't be all in the same place.
Not all in the same place. Why?
Off angle.
Off angles. Why?
Get damage off.
Damage off. Okay.
If Junk comes back, he can.
Right.
Have an ult and just go.
Ryan Shield blocks all damage for Team Blue right now. That's a problem. Blue, Junkrat, Sojourn, Disruptor Shot, Sojourn Spam, all in one tight little choke. Heck, I don't even like, as a Junkrat, this feels like, if I'm red Junkrat here, I don't even like the silence app. It feels too open, right? So what would you do? How would you retake this? As simply as you can.
Back on.
Wait.
Send Junk Kiri to server.
Send Junk Kiri to server. Give me another option. It's a great one. Yeah. Send a Lucio with a Cassidy as well if you want to, or send Cassidy by himself. You guys got it. It's that simple. If you guys were to do a team rotation as 5, it pains me to do a 5-man rotation, but it's effective sometimes, right? So how would you do effective 5-man rotation? What space would you want to rotate through? High ground. Why? Why would you rotate high ground here?
High ground is advantageous in all fights.
Sure, advantageous in all fights, and it also says Diddy Kong, go away, right? That was supposed to be a kickoff. It didn't work out so well. But yeah, you guys get the idea, right? Like ultimately, again, it's clarify. It's so simple, guys. It's so simple. In execution, it's not easy, but in understanding, it needs to be easy. And so it's impossible to ever improve your execution if you don't understand. So you need to be explaining these concepts as simply as you can. I'm going to give you guys, I believe, one more example here. Yeah, okay, this one, a little more complicated. That's why I love dive, right? But ultimately, dive is the exact same kind of things of like, what timing are we going off of and what space do we want to control? So, I'm going to shut up. Oh, it's hard. Team Blue. Anyone got any advice for Team Blue? How would Team Blue take this as a plan? What does Team Blue want to do? Yeah?
I scout where the Zen Brigade is and try to get my tracer in position to go hit.
Brilliant, okay? I'm going to challenge you guys even further. What does Team Blue want to do without factoring in the enemy composition? Ignore the enemy comp entirely. What does Team Blue want to do always, regardless of composition? Well, how does a comp work? What's the cycle or the turn, the Korean term, right? What does the cycle of cooldowns look like for Team Blue? Yeah?
Punish the first mistake they see.
Punish the first mistake you see, but I like that, but I don't love it because it requires somebody to make a mistake.
Force a kill box and execute.
Okay, how do you force a kill box? What is a cycle, Cole?
Set up Sojourn on an off angle and cycle dives with your tracer and monkey at the same time.
Do you see how that's not reliant off of the enemy team to make a mistake? Or it's not circumstantial, it's just do it. Winston Tracer, stage a dive, Sojourn, take an angle. That's it. Now, how much damage do I want my Winston Tracer Lucio to take? 0. What spaces do I need to be playing to make sure that they take no damage? Very tight sight lines. Don't give them open space, they're gonna get poked out, right? That's it. Short sight line, set up your Sojourn on a slightly longer sight line, and see what you got. That might be diving Zen Brig. We prefer it to be diving Zen Brig. We prefer to set them up, but it might not be possible. We might have to take a dive in a Tracer or a Sojourn. We don't care. We care about setting up the positions and playing the sight lines that we want. Now, flip the script here, right? Team Red. Looks familiar, kind of similar to what we looked at in Lijiang Tower. How does Team Red function regardless of what they're playing or where they're playing or when or why or who? Playing around the ball. Okay, why? Why are we playing around ball? I gave you guys the answer to this one earlier. Why does main tank often, why is he often the shot caller?
Because usually he's the point of the spear, like,
yes.
Dictate how you
right. You need to ask yourself, who is the one guy that's useless until he's not? Who is the guy that doesn't exist and get value? He actually has to take action, whether that's a Maywall, a Sombra, Stealth, a Winston Engage. We call these cyclical characters or tempo characters, right? Characters that need to get a cooldown cycle. A ball needs to roll through and take action. We need to be taking action at the same time. So for Team Red, we need to be setting up our ball and our tracer. 3, 2, 1, go. Does it mean that we hard dive? Not necessarily. It might just mean that we peek, okay? Who's going to be peeking? And where and when? What do you guys got? Ball tracer goes in. What does backline do? Yeah, shoot, angle, me, coach, like angle, shoot. That's it, right? What kind of a range does Team Red's backline generally operate in?
Very long.
Very long sightline. So why do we have Brig? To protect that long sightline, exactly. So that's pretty much all there is, right? Like Team Red, we want a sightline for a Sojourn Zen. We want to set up some ball tracer synchronized pressure. We don't really care when we do it, as long as when the ball tracer goes in, we can be shooting something. We don't need to be shooting the same target. We're probably not going to be able to shoot the same target because ball tracer are going to reach spaces that we can't reach. And that's it. Congratulations, you've solved dive. What angles do we want to hold? Are we doing it together? Make sure that when my Winston Tracer, my ball tracer are taking action, that we are also taking action at the same time. It doesn't matter what we shoot. Doesn't matter, as long as we're doing it at the same time. That's team play. That's dive. Congratulations, you solved it. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to say a really, 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 really bad sentence here. You guys are not going to be ready for this one, okay? Brawl, dive, spam, it's irrelevant. Does not matter. The only thing that matters are two things. What range do your characters want to play? And when are we cycling our pressure? We talked about this with the Winston bubble. We talked about this when our Rhine is holding a choke. This is where we're fighting. We talked about that with our ball. Our ball rolls in. It doesn't even have to be the tank. Sometimes we're going to have a deep DPS flank. He's going to go 3, 2, 1, bam. Sometimes our Kiriko is going to be a backline. She's going to say, okay, guys, ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. We just need a timing of when to do it. And the reason why this is so important is because so many people get caught up in the details of like, okay, well, play Brawl and the dive. You need to be grouping up and you need to be taking that. It doesn't matter. Play your character's strengths. And if you guys have been paying attention to any of the pro metas or even just the ranked metas, how many times have you had an actual proper Brawl comp in the last year and a half? Like once, maybe? And by what definition was it Brawl? What even is the definition of spam anymore? Do we even have a proper spam meta besides Circuit Royale? Ugh. You know? You guys get what I'm saying, right? Like even in spam metas, things like timing your Sigma Shield peaks is really, really important. So one of the high level marks of a good spam team, I believe it was Shock and Gladiators, were really good at Sigma mirrors back in 2022. 3, 2, 1, turn the Sigma Shield. Everybody peeks behind, we win the shield trade that way. It's a dive concept. It's something that you wouldn't think with spam, but it's incredibly important. So this is why you have to focus on this. It's not totally irrelevant because you might say Brawl heroes are shorter range heroes, dive ranges, whatever. You do you, I don't care. But the big thing is the fundamentals that are applicable no matter what you do, the hybrids, yes.
Is the Brawl spam dive trifecta, have we just learned as the game has evolved that those are more irrelevant, or is that a development from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch?
Both. Great question. Because Overwatch 2 has a much more dynamic hero design, Sojourn, so it's hard to classify characters, and you really shouldn't try to classify as characters. And even characters like Echo, right? Is Echo a dive character or a poke character?
Yes.
She can do a little both. She's very flexible with her mobility and she's flexible with her range. So you need to look at what she's playing versus and the map and decide how she wants to play. Yes. Really, team macro is just an accumulation of what do our individual characters want to do, and then how can we do that at the same time. That's all it is. If you said Hog, Sojourn, Mercy, Lucio, Brig, wait, that doesn't make sense. Tracer, we'd have Hog holding a choke, Tracer holding an angle, Sojourn holding a sightline with a Mercy pocket, and Lucio holding close with Hog, close with Tracer, or close by himself. You can composite anything that you want, just plugging and playing in random heroes. In fact, I used to do things for fun where I would look at a random rank composition, an East Coast special, and be like, how would this composition be played if it was meta? And it's actually not that hard once you understand what range those characters play. So they're irrelevant. Now, what positions do our heroes want? When are we actually taking taking action, and where, what's the plan, right? What's the plan? Like, what's the plan here, okay? And you notice again that we've still not talked about ultimates hold tight. So what we're gonna do here is we're going to do some training exercises. Now this is gonna be a hybrid of what we did earlier. This is gonna be a little bit of group, and then I'm gonna pull you guys out, and I'm gonna put you, give you the third degree. So we're gonna pull up our, yeah, you're gonna have to impress me, otherwise, you know. Okay, so I'm gonna have this table and this table, these two tables on the left here, or my left, and these two tables back here. You guys in the back are worthless, we don't care about you. And these two tables are gonna be blue, these two tables are gonna be red. So team blue, you guys, I want you to coach, talk with your teammates, talk with you guys, anything, and be like, okay, what is team blue doing well? What is team blue not doing well? From a strategic standpoint, be deliberate, be clear. The same thing goes for Team Red. So Team Red's the Ryan Brawl. If you guys can't see, feel free to get up and move. I'm gonna play this team fight several times through. You guys are gonna have about 3 to 4 minutes to look through, get some brief notes, and remember, prioritize. You don't impress me by saying, well, if they had done this rotate, no. Make it simple. All right, talk amongst each other. Yeah, just whatever. You guys walk up, stand up, take some notes, talk amongst each other.
This is crazy. I know this exact team.
Okay, we'll go back. I'm just going to keep skipping back and forth. We're going to do a few of these. The random pause is because this was actually a team coaching session, but you should have all the information that you need. All right, so I cut your time short just because that's reasonable, that's realistic. You're not always gonna have 6 hours to analyze things, so you're gonna have to do the best that you can. So I'm gonna start, we're gonna alternate between Team Blue and Team Red. If you are very confident that you have, just one thing at a time, one thing that you think Team Blue did very well or should have been doing better, raise your hand, Team Blue side. Anything that major come to mind here? You got something?
I don't, the monkey's synchronized with the rest of the team.
Is the monkey synchronized? Okay, so there's something, what is it right now or is it later in the review or a little bit of both?
I think a little bit of both. Like, I don't see, I mean, it's kind of, I guess I should have maybe gone over it.
You're right, yeah, it's fine.
It kind of, I mean, I can't really tell, but it kind of looks like, especially if you play it forward, that the tracer wasn't ready for the monkey.
Sure, sure. Remember,
also, like, the monkey isn't.
Right. So the turn, right? The timing of our engage. Like we're playing around our Winston's bubble cycle. Why? Because it's the longest cooldown that we have. We have everything active off the bubble. And right now the tracer is kind of doing something, the surgeon is kind of doing something, but our backline's kind of MIA. So when would have been a better time to take the trade? When they come out, right? When we can actually contribute as 5. Great point. Red, you guys have any problems with what Red was doing?
I think they take a little bit too much poke at times.
Okay.
They're pausing to shoot when they need to keep moving.
Right, so their rotation looks more like a pause halfway through and shoot. Why is that such a problem?
Because if the Ana throws their nade, they just lose the fight.
Right, right. They're operating in a space where they don't control any space, and so that you want to spend as little time in that point as well. Great. Okay, Team Blue, anything else that you guys see? Like maybe we can be a little bit more specific if you think those details are important, because I think there's a couple of details here that are pretty off. Yeah.
I think the monkey's starting position and the beginning of the fight is really poor.
Right. But we said that as part of a timing though, right? So I want more.
I mean, yeah, I suppose. I think the Lucio also could have been positioned with the tracer.
Sure. So Lucio's far back. Again, not his effective range. Yeah, go ahead.
After the initial engagement, monkey backs off because he's going to explode, and then that forces Ana to try and take a different angle to keep him alive.
Sure.
Leaves her all the way out there stranded. That whole team can turn on her, and she's done.
Sure, sure.
Is the Ana on the high ground in that situation?
Yeah, Ana's on the high ground here.
Yeah. And Sojourn doesn't get to that high ground until, like, she takes a good angle on that second half where she's at right now. But she's
Sure.
playing not an advantageous spot on low ground.
Exactly. I know and understand that it's hard to see details from the third person perspective, but let's be realistic. This is what you're going to be seeing in scrims. This is what you guys are going to have to work with. And to make you guys feel better, scrim overhead review, it doesn't get much easier. So nobody's perfect. Yeah, Team Red.
Oh, I was going to say something for Blue.
Well, good, no, to finish Blue, because I actually might want to go somebody else for Team Red.
For Blue, I was going to say, what really happens is, when the monkey backs out, it throws off the timing of the entire comp. It's really the timing you want to be playing around into a Brawl comp is nade.
Sure.
You're on a nade. And you see, we throw on a nade really early, and so then monkey's going to jump in very late.
Yeah, so we have monkey early, then nade late, but then monkey, it's a total desync, right? We've got a monkey cycle and then we have an on a nade, but there's literally nobody there to follow up off of the on a nade, and then the monkey goes in afterwards, right? Big problem with the cycle of like, what is our timing? What is our cycle looking like? Like we're playing different games. Team Red, do you guys see anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I really dislike them sitting back at the very end of that clip where they are, because there's such an easy pinch from blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a nasty pincer, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we didn't, whether you wanted to go push the high ground, but like the team just grouped through hotel, and then seen any abilities from the May or
sure.
Like the short range, so when they're sitting back there in the corner,
yes,
it's bad for all their.
Yeah, the rule is that you rotate, you group to rotate, you spread the fight. Group to rotate, spread the fight. You had your hand raised?
I don't know what the cooldown was like, but I feel like earlier, after Monkey had already jumped into the bubble, I think that would have been a good spot if May did have wall.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like timing your cooldowns around the enemy team's cooldowns. How would you change Team Red's positioning right now? Because you guys said, oh, it's a nasty pincer. You're right. So how can you play your effective ranges? Oh, by the way, what is Red's effective range in this matchup? I disagree. I think it's tricky, isn't it? Because this is the bait, right? You go, oh, it's a Brawl comp, and you turn off your brains just a little bit. But Tracer, Lucio, Winston, these are not poke characters. I know Ana Sojourn are kind of, sort of, but we have Cassidy, we have Bap, we have May Icicles, right? So it's not super clear, right? So how would we control space as Team Red while still playing our effective range with our current rotation? What do you got?
The May and the Lucio should stick a little bit closer to the hotel to stop them.
Yes. So you put May and Lucio in hotel because May and Lucio can function in effectively close ranges, and now you've shut off that flank.
That allows the BAP and the Kree to sit.
Yep. And play their sightlines, right? So the BAP cast are able to play their longer range sightlines. The May Lucio are able to play their effective sightlines by denying the enemy Tracer Lucio. So you end up marking but playing selfishly at the same point. Because I'm a May, I want to get a messy in that room in there. That's good for me. I'm a Lucio, I want to do that. So again, you notice that it's team play through selfish behavior. You guys get that? You play your strengths. You don't go, I'm going to help my team by group. No. Do your job. Mark the Tracer, mark the Lucio with your May Lucio because that's their effective range, short room. BAP casts the open space. Ryan Stanzer looking useless as he does in Overwatch 2. On point. And that's it. Congratulations. We've solved it. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Great job. Really, really good job. Yeah, I actually have nothing to add here. I was expecting to have to, talk a little bit, but you guys just ruined everything, so that's fine. All right, ranked time, because look at Team Blue's comp. So let's group it up again. So this time I'm gonna switch things up just a little bit. Actually no, I'm gonna have you guys Team Red now. You guys did the dive. You guys do Team Red now. Same two tables. Team Blue, you guys get the ranked composition here. Okay. Same thing. Prioritize. I would like different people to give me feedback this time around. So if you already gave feedback, keep your yappers shut. And yeah, let's roll. No.
I do know.
Okay, so finish up your conversations. I know visibly it can be a little tricky, so I will be patient. So let's start with Team Red this time. Anybody from Team Red want to offer some ideas on execution that could have been done better? No pressure. If you've already answered, we'll give you, I'm going to not prioritize you. Please.
I have an hour played in this game. Like 1 hour.
Great.
I have no idea what's going on. You're trying to teach me these characters' names. But from what I've gathered so far from the last videos and what you've shown just now, the one with the sunglasses is inside of a building when it's not supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, out of the mouths of babes. You know what I'm saying? Yes, that is actually very correct. Okay. So anyone who can elaborate on the sunglasses wearing British thing? What is that? What's the actual problem here?
Should be going with the Winston.
Why?
The monkey, right?
Yeah. Why?
Easy damage, easy okay.
Right, just range, right? Like she's not effective where she is right now. So let's dig deeper, because it's my favorite word. What angle? should Tracer be on, and why? Effective range.
On that bridge to blink over it.
Yep, that's the cheat way of doing things. Just blink right across the bridge, right at the Torbjorn. Absolutely. Give me a better option.
Under the stair.
Yes, 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 yes. I see the finger being pointed back there. Around the building. Yes, yes.
I would put her in the bottom of the building she's in right now and have her cut across.
Yes, exactly. Finding some alternative route to wrap around. I actually think Tracer should probably find some way to access the staircase here. You guys might not be as familiar with this map. She needs to be here. She needs to be here, pincering on the Ana. Why is the pincer useful? Well, psychological, there's a lot of reasons why. But we can actually boil it down to even simpler than that. The reason why Tracer needs to pincer here is because every other approach is a long distance. This approach is a short distance. That's it, okay? Team Blue, what do you guys think? We can go later in the VOD, earlier in the VOD. I don't know. You guys got anything? What do you got?
I think we were set up, with a pretty defensive, angle back here.
Yep.
I think Diva was kind of mispositioned at first.
Okay.
Where she was all the way up there, and then Ana had to use nade defensively. I think she maybe should have saved nade. So like when Winston jumps in right there.
Oh, wait a second. So you're talking about even earlier here, like here. Why is this an issue? She's a close range character. What's the problem?
I don't think Ana's set up to view her.
Oh, she's not the only one, right?
Yeah, I know.
Nobody's set up. So she's playing her effective range. Do you remember the Reinhardt Junkrat analogy we used in Legion Tower? Where like Reinhardt Junkrat holds a choke here, but Sojourn holds the long sight line back there. What's the problem? Well, they're not fighting at the same time. They're not fighting at the same time. So this is actually a fine play from Diva if our setup was different, but it's not. So then where should Diva play right here? Back, right? Maybe just underneath, right? Just like waiting for them to take, you're exactly right. And you're right, that forces nade, that loses, so Diva's like, well, I need to get early pressure. No, you don't. You need to play your effective range. Great pickup there for Team Blue. Okay, let's go back to Team Red. We will come back to Team Blue in a little bit. Anything from Team Red you guys see? So Tracer needs to be on an angle or at least closing the distance. You got something else, maybe?
I would have had Monkey jump in first to take attention off the turret and then have Soldier or somebody else pick up the back defenses from under the bridge.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So when we actually look at the dive here, Winston's in here, but it feels like we're a little bit late to swing on the peak, right? So Sojourn should be peeking that like literally simultaneously at the same time. So you actually have a dive where it's like the Monkey, Tracer, maybe Lucio are engaged in the dive, but the Sojourn's not. She's just taking advantage of the attention the dive is getting. Anybody else for Team Red? That was a good one. It's a small little detail here. Get in the micro. Go for it.
I would have bet him swing right, anchor the Sojourn and Curie up top of the window to poke.
Okay.
And then have your dive, the dive trio, hit the high ground with the other.
Sure. I agree. I think the target priority here is bad. Why is Torbjorn a bad target to dive? Think range. Don't think armor. Because that is a reflection. Armor gives him what effective range? Both, right? And so why would I choose to jump the target that is more comfortable up close than the entirety of their composition? Makes no sense. So who would be a better dive target? Right. Anybody. Ana, Zen, Ashe, whatever. Now, if the Torbjorn was out of position, remember the Diva earlier? The Diva was a good dive target earlier. Why? Out of position. She was fighting by herself. So anybody that's by themselves, except the Roadhog, is killable, right? So here, though, we actually have to choose to play our effective range while factoring in their effective range. You wouldn't dive a Reaper, so why not dive something that's going to be miserable about you getting up close, okay? Trying to think here. Well, a couple other micro things as well. I think you guys could probably, I don't think you guys get a chance to see it here, but my critique as well is the Winston actually dives 1 second cooldown on Bubble, and Bubble's late. It's just a timing issue. You got to have Bubble. You got to bam, Bubble, because otherwise, look at Naudelin's HP. This guy's a Patreon of mine, so he's obviously an idiot. So, he's jumping in at really a horrendous timing. So yeah, so like we want to set up a Tracer on an angle. We need to make sure our jumps are on bubble cooldown at the same time. And then we need to be jumping the targets that are the most fragile. That's obvious, right? But okay. There, congratulations, Team Red. Well done. Team Blue, I'm gonna open the floor to you guys. A couple other details here. Yeah.
I think the Ashe is out of position.
How so?
Ashe has no cover, even though.
Yeah. It's a stupid little detail, but yeah, no cover equals bad, okay? Anything else? This is an awkward point, right? Everybody's played this, right? It sucks, right? It sucks. Like, it just doesn't feel like there's anywhere good to hold, but surely we can do better, right?
For the entire time, I have no idea what this guy was doing. Trying to hold angles to be able to get that ball on whoever needs.
Yep.
He probably needs to scoot a little bit closer to the tour.
Okay.
He's gonna get dove, obviously.
Yep.
The monkey's gonna go that direction, but he's just, I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, he's not sure either. Yeah, so I think that, yeah, exactly. Like being decisive about where you're holding here. I think we could leverage this staircase here on the left side a little bit further because it is further, right? You could go down this staircase here, like either one of these staircases here. I've even seen situations where you can put somebody underneath here as well. You could put somebody on the edge of this high ground where if they get dove, they just drop. There's all sorts of options here to keep your range honest. But yeah, I think it could have been played better. Like I said, it doesn't matter what comp they play, you can sit and analyze. And again, you're pulling actionable stuff here like, hey, I think we need to be playing better angles with our cover. We need to be playing a little bit more range with how we're thinking. And obviously our timing around our diva needs to be better. Because yeah, the fact that we don't have nade here is offensive. Okay, let's, you guys ready for the big bucks? Ultimates. Because ultimates are either game changers or complements of things that the composition already wants to do. For example, poke comp, right? I said the word. There's no such thing as poke, guys, remember. So looking at this composition here, we're gonna switch things up again. Team blue now, you guys are team blue, and you guys are team red, you two tables. I don't want easy answers here. I want you guys to look at the ultimate situation, including the ultimate that is currently active right now. I believe that is Infrasight from team blue. Dragon, BAP window, close trance, close flux, team red. And I don't just to know what ultimates should be used. I want you to be specific where, when, why, how, what's the ordering. Give me the details. In fact, I'm gonna leave the freeze frame here because the information on your screen isn't super relevant here. I don't want you to critique what they do. I want you to tell me what they should just do. So team blue, what is team blue's strategy, these two tables? What is team red strategy, these two tables? Come up with a plan. And by the way, there are lots of good answers here.
Analyze it with, like if I'm analyzing for red, should I take blue's ults into account or if I were playing
Oh, great question. So really quick, I'm gonna say one thing, that great question we had here. Should we factor in team red's ults if I'm coaching team blue and vice versa? And the answer is yes. Sorry. This is hard. I'm aware this is hard. Good luck. Okay, so these two blue, these two red. Now I'm gonna give you guys a quick disclaimer. There's plenty of options. There's lots of options. And crucially, if you're on poor team red right now, you're kind of screwed. You don't have map control, you're at an ultimate disadvantage, you're kind of in trouble. And if you're team blue, you're kind of screwed as well because you really want to try and use as few ultimates as possible to win this fight because you don't want to go in next fight with no ult buying. So let's start with team red here. How do you win this fight? How do you win this fight? Any ideas? And again, there are a plethora of options here. None of them are particularly good, but what's the best that you can come up with? What do you got?
It's very creative. Can I
Yeah, please get up here and like you got a coach now.
Very creative. But the fact that we don't know what happens kind of throws it off. But what I would have typically done is wait for the sights to go away because no one wants that.
Sure.
A very long rotate, but we have a sig with the shield. Could be we go all the way around here, and now they're back here. We take.
Sure, we could rotate, take space away. Yeah.
That ult, you can either, if their team's grouped up here, realistically, as someone who has played snipers before, I would be back up there. I would either try to use my VAP ult to take out either a tank or a support. If these two are grouped up, I would put it here and take them out or go the other way.
Sure. So you're either rotating or using an ultimate for space. Yeah. Better sightlines, okay? Because that's the key thing. Like, what does space really mean? It just means that they have better positions. That's it. Team blue has high ground. They can see everything. We're sitting cowering in the middle of the open. We don't even have good cover. That's all the space is. It's not some esoteric concept. Any other ideas for team red here? Got a rotation? What do you got?
We were thinking wait out.
Infrasights, yeah. Yeah.
Hit back window up on that pillar.
Yep. Right where Sigma is.
Down at payload. Back window to create space. We're grouped up, but if we have trans for their flux, so we can get up around the corner and take away their high ground position.
Sure, so wait on for sights, set up a BAP window for space, expect them to respond with Dragon Strike, Flux, but we have an ultimate to respond to that. You've just introduced a concept called layering, right? Okay, so remember that. Ult forces a response, you need to anticipate their response. Now, obviously that can get very complicated as a coach. I recommend just starting with what's their first response going to be, which will probably be a Flux, and then anticipate for that. You can't anticipate 7 steps ahead. Okay, what about Team Blue here? We got some thoughts from Team Blue. What do you guys got?
But what we agree on is that we're probably throwing away the Hanzo ult first in terms of ult usage because we try to get a or a trance out of that.
Yep.
And then we're looking to then get a flux depending on how that goes.
So you're doing a good job, but I'm going to put you under the 3rd degree because you're. How do you set up your Hanzo ult? When, where?
that was where our million ways to skin a cat came in.
Yeah.
Where we know where payload is, we'll assume we can see their sigma, and we know where their Hanzo is for sure.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'm probably, okay, thank you for playing.
Yep.
Here I'm probably throwing it through the trees.
Yep. Yep. Because this is where they're holding, right? They want to hold here, so then we drag in it, they have to move into the open, they get their heads blown off.
We're back, and then there's one person.
Yep.
And then the idea with I agree, Michigan State and Springfield are in agreement, because then we would use BAP ult last, because we could get some value out of charging everybody's ults back up quickly.
Yes. Yeah, key thing here is the layering, right? An ult, you one ult to force things and the other ult to execute. You don't use them all at once because it gives them the opportunity to either kite all of them or, oh, we lost, but we forced 3 ults. I look at this, and this is where, okay, so this is maybe the most helpful way of looking at it, is you need to look for general principles, okay? This is, if you've done nothing else today, simplify things, right? For Team Red, you're not gonna win this fight, okay? You're not gonna win this fight. So you need to be like, what can we do to force the most chaos out of this fight possible? Flank, rotate. Send right now, send somebody through this little staircase. You guys know the staircase I'm talking about with my mouse, right? Send your Hanzo up there with your Zenyatta. Cause chaos. You're not going to win this fight, honestly. You have no space. You have no ultimates. Fight dirty, okay? So you need to fight dirty, all right? Team Blue, your job is to be disciplined and to layer your ultimates, right? Check flanks. Check what's going on around you. Go with the easy options. Don't overthink things. Just use a dragon here, see what happens. It'll create space. And don't throw 3 ultimates at the same time. So I actually want to move on from this one, but I do think that there are multiple different answers. You could flux on the choke to force cooldowns. You could dragon. You could infrasight. But we don't want to use them all at once. And Team Red, I think this is something that's applicable to all compositions. If you do not have ults or space, do not fight clean. Fight dirty. Tight flanks, tight angles, chaos, do stupid crap. Don't just do the honest Overwatch and lose miserably. You owe it to your team to do things otherwise. So I'm keeping this one purposefully open-ended. We'll move on. Last one, this one will be a little bit simpler. You're welcome. Team Blue, Team Red. I'm going to go ahead and spoil exactly what happens here. Team Blue's opening up with Blizzard. You guys can see it in the UI right there. And then they actually followed up with a BAP window simultaneously. And I believe Team Red loses this fight, but it gets really messy. I think Flux is forced later in this fight as well from Team Blue. Okay, so Team Red, Team Blue. Now I want you guys to pay very close attention exactly the percentages of ultimates, factor in ultimates one more time. Team Blue, Team Red. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, I know I didn't give you near enough time, but frankly, I don't care. You're gonna have to deal with it. How many of you guys on Team Blue, Team Red were so focused on ultimates, because that's what we've been talking about, you didn't pay attention to the fact that this is Rhine Bastion versus Sigma Soldier, right? That definitely changes how we approach things, right? Range, okay? Sigma Soldier, more longer ranges usually. Does the fact that we have Blizzard change that? Yes, sort of, but we have to at least factor that in mind, okay? So let's start with Team Red here. What do you guys got? Compositional, setup, ult usage, any details to point out? What do you got?
They do a pretty good job of using amp speed.
Yeah.
It appears to kind of close the gap. They should probably look to Maywall something or somebody.
Right.
Sigma or just blowing off the
window. What should have been the plan in this fight? What should have been the plan if you Team Red? Because there's a reason why we say what, when, and where. Because that's the order of importance, right? What was the plan? We knew they had Flux, BAP window, Mail, at least we should have. So what should have been the plan here? I heard some people saying dry fight, which is just code words for not using ults. What do you guys think? Right, that's the biggest mistake here, right, for Team Red. Why are we engaging 90% unbeat? Why are we even dropping 90% unbeat? This is the biggest mistake, probably the biggest mistake that I see besides comboing ultimates in like all ranks, is people just take fights at 95% ultimate, and they will lose the fight because they're 5% away from having. Imagine if we had beat right now. Like imagine if we had beat right now. We would probably win this fight because we just beat N right here. It's a poorly set up fight from Blue, okay? Anything else for Team Red? What do you guys think about their setup, right? Because the only ult thing here is we should have built beat. That's pretty much it, right? Maybe Shatter as well. What about setup?
Bastion on high ground good.
I think Bastion on high ground's okay, given the fact that we're dealing with like Blizzard here and Flux. Otherwise, he'd probably just die, right? Don't normally play Bastion far away, but actually here it kind of makes sense. Anything else? Yeah.
Moving to the right into that close quarters area.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Ryan's at like 85% shatter.
Right, right. We could even look to rotate, like obviously maybe a little scared of Blizzard, but like utilizing these rooms right here. Yeah, exactly, okay. What do you guys think about Team Blue? Team Blue, what do you guys think? Let's start with the compositional strategy, like our setup right now. What do you guys think about our setup?
Soldier's snoozing.
Yeah, Soldier's super far away, but is he mispositioned? I think he's okay. He's playing his effective range. He can contribute to his team as long as we're fighting here. What do you guys think about the setup from everybody else?
Not sure what. I was gonna say, I dislike standing so close and in the middle like that.
As who? Be specific.
Sigma
Sure.
can stay, but I think Bap and Lucio are just kind of no man's land.
I agree.
And like
Totally in the open.
so easy to run on. So like,
And we should anticipate them being run on why. If we're giving Red credit for being smart, what should Red have right now? Beat. Baptiste is dead, okay? Maybe this is with the layering. You have to think one step ahead, all right? I agree. Lack of cover usage, not expecting a beated Bastion Ryan on top of your Baptiste. Okay, so let's talk ultimates here. What do you think about the ults usage? What do you think about the setup of the ults here?
I think if you're popping Blizzo and you're not next to your soldier, I don't know what you're doing.
Sure. What else?
the Blizz was very bad.
Blizz was very bad. Why? What was bad about this? I want you to get into the mindset of Blue here. Pretend you're a psychologist here. What do you think comms like are in Blue right now?
Blizz the most. They were expecting
Right. It's just total chaos, right? There's no setup of who we're blizzarding. We haven't even used our May wall yet. We're just throwing crap out because we have it, right? So what should it have looked like?
Put up a wall.
Put up a wall. Maintain your distance. Shoot. Oh, there's Rhine Pen. Oh, there's Amp. Oh, there's Ice Block. Now we pop our ultimates, right? Just play the fight, honestly. And if you're gonna rush your blizzard, you need to know who you're blizzarding. You're lucky, right? You could. Right, this blizzard could have whiffed entirely, and not to mention the fact that we're comboing our ultimates, but our BAP window is like what effective range versus the comp that has Rhine Bastion? It's way too close, right? Now, what if Team Red had BAP window and Team Blue had May ult? And that's it. How would Team Blue set up? You want to play the distance, right? Well, wait. The enemy team has BAP window, we have blizzard. How does that change things? We're now the closer range character. Maybe we put our May here, hide. Maybe we keep our Sigma at a distance, but we keep the May close. Different ways of approaching it. So there's a lot of detail here. We'll wrap up there. Let me make sure that we're all set here. Yeah, so I guess when you're practicing analyzing macros as a coach, there's an order of operations here. Start simple with comfortable compositions that you're familiar with, no ultimates. Then incorporate ultimates, okay? Then hybrid compositions, and by hybrid just mean weird comps. And if you want to, you can incorporate ranked compositions just for fun. But really, like, you don't need to be the smartest. You just need to lead productive discussion with your team about how they should be approaching fights. And I think that, again, you can notice here that we could have gone in so many different directions. Setups, playing our effective range, fighting on the same spot, our timing, what was like effective ult planning, right? Like, okay, in these situations, we need to be layering or use this ult first or that ult first. Or remember the spam comp, right? I said the word again. On Circuit Royale, we didn't have enough ultimates. We should have played for more chaos. We should have played more like a rat, right? And we didn't. That's another concept that you guys can practice because that stuff happens all the time. So the key thing is like there's a lot of detail and nuance once you dig deep, but it's important to never bite off more than you can chew as a coach when you're studying. So like your players, you need to develop one step at a time. Use my content, use other content, study the game yourself, develop slowly, but it's extremely important to come up with your own ideas and solutions. Don't just regurgitate what I say. There's a lot of like, I swear like NAEU tier 3 is literally just mini Spilos everywhere. And that's great, like I'm flattered, but you need to actually take my stuff and develop and make it better, especially with the people that you're working with. And don't overwhelm yourself. And the final yap, my last page here. What now? Use the notes that you've taken today to develop habits. It's very easy to be extremely motivated right now. Like, man, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Let's execute. And then you're going to go home and you're going to have your miserable, mundane, toxic team experience and lose all motivation entirely. Be patient. Don't get too high right now. Don't get too low later on. It's probably somewhere in between. Be patient, set the goals, execute in the small habits over and over and over and over again. Remember, coaching like playing is about skill, not just knowledge. It's about your ability to apply habits and do them over and over again. Develop habits, set process-oriented goals, like what Coach Ascoft was talking about. The notes that you've taken are meaningless without action and contemplation. And we'll finish with that one. I really highly recommend that the best thing that you can do as a coach is to shut up and think. It's just like the stupid YouTube thing. You need to shut up. You need to shut up, you need to think. You need to shut up, you need to think in the shower, the flight back, think about ways that you're gonna implement some of these things and then go and do it. Yeah, my final slide, socials. I would put my PayPal up there, but I think Cole would shoot me. But yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. If you have any questions, I'll be around here. I don't know what the event schedule is looking like. I know we're having a closing ceremony in a second, but I'll be around. don't hesitate to come up and ask me questions, whatever. I'm here for this purpose, so I'm here for whatever. So yeah, that's all we got.